Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to our channel. So in this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was reborn as Kyuubi movie 1, this is part 1, and if you want more then please leave a like, share and subscribe, let's get in the video. Please, hold my hand, her voice was barely a whisper, the essence of life fleeting in her tone, I don't it's so cold. She could barely open her eyes, the light all but faded from her once beautiful lavender orbs, her hair had years ago lost its vibrant color that he fell in love with, leaving it a dull faded white. She was too young, he was too young. She didn't deserve this. She wasn't supposed to die, she wasn't supposed to have been taken from him. The tears burned as they trailed down his whiskered cheeks, hands shaking as they grasped desperately to the cold hands of his beloved. Please don't leave me, he was unaware of the broken voice that slipped past his lips, his heartbroken plea falling on deaf ears, had pleaded the same thing for hours, but it mattered little in the end. If only he was stronger, then maybe, the Naruto won't have to die. Then maybe his too beloved. Her hand shook as she raised it to cup his cheeks, brushing the wild blonde bangs out of his eyes. A bleeding red met her weak frail gaze, his eyes blazing with a strong stolen power that was not his own. Those eyes, they are so violent, so full of hate, she muttered in a barely audibly breath, her light fading. But I still love you even after what you did, she breathed ever so softly, if our children could see you now. His grip grew tighter, begging the gods or whoever would listen that she stayed with him. Her hand lost the little strength it had left, falling to the bed below. She stopped moving. It was all for you. Please. You can't leave me. Don't leave me, his voice was hoarse, raw and destroyed from his crying. Why? He finally fell to his knees, cradling her dying body to his own. She didn't react when he pulled her tightly to his body. When he cried out her name, screaming to the heavens that she don't go. It's not your fault. Darling. He couldn't bring himself to utter a sound as she muttered her last words. She took her final breath, a beautiful smile on her lifeless face. I love you, Naruto-kun. And she said no more, for the Shinigami had taken her. Bent on his knees he stayed there for hours, eyes never leaving her. As the world fell to ashes around him, he was once again left alone. Why? Why couldn't he just be left unbothered with her? Why did they have to intervene? Why did she have to die? Why did they have to die? It didn't make sense. It all didn't make sense. No, the first words uttered out of his mouth within the last few hours were of a blazing defiance. It's not going to end like this, I refuse. Blood poured out from his eyes, the unmatched power of the Sharingan blazing, his eyes morphed into something else, fueled by his unending hate. Fine. If they wished to take everything that was ever important to him away, then so be it. But he would take even more back. Powered by the mixed Na and the eyes of legend, he made a change, reality started to bend, the walls that made up the room didn't exist anymore. The world shifted underneath his stolen power, and nothing would stop him, the clock rewound, everything moving in reverse, steadily picking up speed until it was blinding. He could already feel his memory being locked away, retreating into the deepest recesses of his mind. He would go back to the beginning, and when he got there he would fix this. Make sure that it would never happen, no matter what the cost. He wouldn't lose her, he'd first see the world burn, then let her die. He'd return to the start, and she would live, his children would live. They'd take their victory away from them, their progress in their mission, their accomplishments against him, everything, he'd undo it all, because even if he brought her back now, there was nothing left in this world, they'd taken it all away. So he'd reset it all, he swore by it. And the next time around, when he finally remembered this moment in time that would never again come to pass, he'd strike first. No one would ever dare to touch her, his precious wife, because if they did, they would meet the same fate as the burning world around him. Hanahagakure no Sato, a village hidden deep in the depths of the land of fire. It was a legendary village, one filled to the brim with stories bordering on insane and sometimes unbelievable. The place was one of the most powerful cities in the elemental nations, and it held that title for a very good reason. Famed for producing some of the most powerful ninja to ever exist, and some of the worst threats to ever grace the planet as well. It was a ninja village that had never properly known defeat, and it had its powerful warriors to thank for that. But for all of its amazing accomplishments, it had also suffered greatly in the years since its creation. Some of the worldwide legends that they produced were also widely known for going rouge, leading a life of crime and violence. Many of the ninja that the people apprised had either left the village or simply quit and left to seek out a new life. Madara Uchiha, one of the most powerful men to have ever lived, and the close friend of the very first leader to the village, Hashirama Senju, this man's legacy was a hard one, filled with rage, hate, loss, despair, and at the end, betrayal. It was said that his life had led him to madness, and the end result was chaotic disaster. A fight took place that shook the nations forever, a battle never to be forgotten. In the end, it was his best friend that took him down. Then came the Second Ninja World War, and all the legends that arose in the chaos. chaos. This war would prove to be the one that truly left its scars on the world. For every battle they won, they lost a great number of their own to the chaos. By the time of the Second Shinobi World War's end, they had lost more than 50% of their fighting force. Not that their enemies fared any better, but it was still worth mentioning. However, it was this war that produced 3 undeniable legends. The first was Tsunade Senju, the sole granddaughter of Hashirama Senju, and holder of the title, strongest woman in the world. She was a woman famed for her superhuman strength, her world-renowned healing abilities, her beautiful womanly features, and her rather legendary bosom. Then there was Jiraiya, a man famed as a sage of sorts. He was known for the creation of many new and powerful ninjutsu, as well as his ability to summon powerful toad warriors that would assist him in battle. The man was also known as a pervert, though he claimed to be the biggest pervert in the nation, so it wasn't hard to believe. Then came Orochimaru, a man that was overtly affected by the war, more mentally than physically, a man already mentally unsound from an estranged childhood, suffered painfully from the horrors of war, though extremely powerful, and overwhelmingly smart in his own right, he still came up short when it came to the village's motto, the will of fire. These 3 had become known as the legendary trio. They had proved to be one of the strongest teams in the world, and that title has yet to be passed on to another. However, after the war's end, things changed. Tsunade had been a victim of loss one too many times, and after the rather bloody loss of her lover Dan, she developed a crippling fear of blood, unable to escape her past. She became a drunkard and left the village in a sort of extreme long-term mission, a mission that would most likely never see an end till the day she died. Orochimaru, so affected by death around him, became addicted to finding a way to live forever. His theories eventually gave way to experiments that slowly became more and more inhumane. Where he once experimented on dead animals, it eventually led to human experiments. He eventually began to experiment on his own body in his search for immortality. One day word got out about his horrible deeds, and he fled the village and was labeled as a missing nin. Another war took place years later, a war that would spell the end of all wars for many years to come. By this time in history, all of the elemental nations had felt the pain of loss, and simply did not have the manpower to mount any more wars. It was partially thanks to a treaty that Konoha made that stopped all of the fighting for a time, but this last war still had its drawbacks, and because of it, the world was once again changed forever. Not even a year after their victory over their sworn enemy, the village hid in the stone, something horrible took place. No one really remembered how it truly happened that fateful night, but everyone remembered the terror that enveloped them when it did. It was in the dead of night when it happened. One moment all was quiet, then suddenly as if from thin air a beast was summoned, a monster so terrifying that many died merely from the killing intent that the beast produced. It was a fox, a 9-tailed fox, only one of its kind existed, and it was famed in legend as being the strongest creature in the entire world. It was also known for its destructive potential and the untold devastation that it could cause if it so desired. Towering over the village, its many tails swung about, wreaking havoc and chaos. If not for the timely intervention by the 4th Hokage, the village would have seen its end that night. The death toll that night was great, and the ones lost were unreplaceable. The 4th Hokage sacrificed his own life to seal the beast into the body of his newborn son, effectively putting an end to the beast's rampage. With his dying breath, he begged the aging 3rd Hokage to protect his child, to allow him to be seen as a hero to the villagers. The 3rd had promised him that he would do so, and he had faith in the village as a whole. But the beast defeated and the battle over, the 3rd Hokage thought it right to show the village their hero, for it was because of the 4th Hokage's sacrifice and his newborn sons that the village was still standing. He had faith that they would be thankful to him and see him as a hero just like the 4th hoped, but the 4th's faith was misplaced. When he made the declaration to the village council, their response was anything but positive. The council had immediately called for the boy's death, calling him a monster, an abomination of life. The 3rd had pleaded with them to see the good of the situation, but they were unmoved. They would not listen, their minds were already set, knowing that they would most likely go behind his back and try to kill the child. He hastily created a law that would hopefully do some damage control. It was a simple rule, that if broken was punishable by death. The rule was that no one was to tell anyone outside of the council about the child's containment of the Kyuubi. But they found a way around that, and soon enough the entire village was aware of his existence. The child's safety was in jeopardy, and without his help he was sure that he wouldn't survive the night. In an attempt to hide him, he placed him in an orphanage with other babies. He had prayed that because the villagers weren't aware of what he looked like that he would be able to hide him. At the very least he just needed to protect him until he could hold his own in life, but accomplishing that would prove to be harder than he thought possible. As the years slowly passed by, the village's treatment of young Naruto got gradually worse. The Hokage's personal ninja made sure that the kid wasn't killed, but there was only so much that they could do with their busy lives. There were times when his guardians had to be called away for an important mission, leaving him unattended for days on end. end. Those were the days of his life that would shape him into who he was and what kind of person he turned out to be in the end. Those were the times in his life that almost broke him, but for some reason he carried on. If one thing was for certain, it was that Naruto was very strong in mind and it would take a lot to put him in the ground, but the village was tempted to try it anyway. But the boy was smart for his age, too smart. He suffered the people's wrath with a stone-cold will that they dared to try and shatter. They would do so much to him, and somehow so much of it went under the radar, letting the punishment continue unaltered. He wasn't free from those his own age it seemed, as the parents had spoken ill of him to their own children, and in turn the children grew to hate him as well. When he was finally old enough to attend the ninja academy, he was freed from the orphanage entirely, as on his 6th birthday, the Hokage got him an apartment to live in away from prying eyes. It was sad to know that something as minor as a rundown apartment was the best thing he had ever received in his life, but the boy loved it like it was his own and couldn't even bring himself to hate it at all. His time at the academy, however, would prove to be another test in his life. The teachers there hated him just about as much as the rest of the villagers did, but they were bound by their oath to teach and couldn't just kick him out. That being said, that didn't stop them from altering his education to a painful degree. His teachers would mistreat him and punish him for even the smallest of things. Had developed a bad verbal tic and a strange way of speaking in general due to a lack of proper teaching, and it was practically hard-coded into his brain to the point that it wasn't going away anytime soon. But his friends didn't care, it just became one of his charms in their eyes. His eyes had become cynical much too early in his life, and the Hokage feared that he'd never recover that adolescence again. He talked and behaved like someone far too old, yet it seemed to switch between that and his normal personality occasionally. The Hokage feared that he'd become stunted in his thinking, forcing him to view the world differently than others. It couldn't be helped. Still, he was somewhat outgoing and had attempted to make friends with those his age. The few times he actually started to become friendly with someone, they were eventually pulled away by their parents and tricked into thinking he was a monster. But there was one that stood out to him, like a shining light in a darkened world. She was the one that his soul told him to become friends with, a young lavender-haired girl who was the young heiress to the prestigious Hyuga clan, a member of royalty in the Land of Fire. As a young boy had watched her from a distance, nervous and scared to approach in the fear that he'd be rejected by her. But then one day she approached him, asking if he would be her friend. That was the happiest day of his life, and he would remember it forever. The two quickly became inseparable after that point, and try as he might, Hinata's father was simply unable to separate the two. Young Naruto had a look in his eyes, a gaze that only a man that had lost everything could possibly be able of holding. But he was just a child, never having experienced such trials before, and despite his horrendous upbringing, he was so kind to those he held dear. First it was Hinata, then the Inyazuka clan heir and Kiba, quickly followed by Shikamaru of the Nara clan. The three became close and were the first to be called his friends, and Hinata his closest most precious person. The four became great friends, and even when the rest of the world hated him, he could continue on forward with them by his side, and it would continue like this for the next 5 years, until his 11th birthday. Young 11-year-old Naruto was seen talking with a member of the 3rd Hokage's personal Anbu, being as they were tasked as his personal guard. No one batted an eye. Although, perhaps they should have, because not long after that, Uzumaki Naruto vanished. No one ever really noticed the boy's sudden disappearance, only a few took note, and his close friends were content to stand by if he was in danger. It was nearing the later half of the afternoon, and the sun was still up in the sky above the ninja academy. The time for learning had just come to an end for the day, and the young ninja in training had begun to file out of the room, their minds set on what they were going to do for the rest of the afternoon. Iruka, Naruto's homeroom teacher, had been rather distracted all day, and it had really started to show. His body was on autopilot as he gathered together the children's homework and assignments, but his gaze had been locked onto the window for the past 20 minutes. He was worried. It had been a few days now since he last saw Naruto, and the stress had been eating away at him. Iruka was another one of the very few in the village that didn't see the boy as a monster and had even befriended him on a certain level. It would be all too easy to simply hate the boy, but he wasn't like that. He was brought out of his dazed state when he noticed the last few students preparing to leave, and he reached out to them before they could. Hinata, Kiba, Shikamaru, he called out, grabbing the attention of the three ninja in training. "Are you three busy at the moment?" he asked. The kids shared a glance with each other before turning back to him. "Yeah, actually, what's up, sensei?" It was Kiba who spoke up, hands behind his head in a relaxed position. Iruka seemed to ponder something for a moment before he spoke up again. "If it's not too bothersome, could the three of you go by Naruto's place? I haven't seen him in a few days, and am starting to worry about him," the man asked, though his face was pleading. It was the Hyuga heiress that spoke up next. "We're actually on our way there and now, sensei," she responded. Iruka blinked in surprise, but his look melted into a smile. "Thank you, I'm sorry to task you three with this, but I simply don't have time to do so myself," Iruka stated, a thankful smile adorning his face. "Do any of you know where he lives?" I do," Hinata stuttered. The three of them turned to her at her response, and she blushed bright red at their playful looks. She liked him, no secret there. "Well, either way, you should be heading out now. I don't want you three out late, you hear?" Haruka stated, glancing up at the clock. The sun would be setting within an hour or two, and he didn't want them out that late. It would be on his head were something to happen to them, although he was sure they could defend themselves from a common thug at this point. "Yes, Haruka-sensei." They all responded. The two boys quickly left the room, quickly followed by Hinata, who bowed to Haruka before leaving. A few minutes later found the three ninja and training on a set course for the red light district, the part of town where Naruto's apartment was located. Shikamaru looked as if he couldn't be bothered, while Kiba was having trouble not running over to get it over with sooner. Yet, despite the two boys' nonchalance, they were both just as concerned as Hinata had been. The walk was rather silent, the only sound the quiet late-day conversations between some of the villagers. People stopped to greet the trio as they passed, offering up smiles as waving as they went. Hinata waved back out of respect, and she had to keep up an image in public, lest she get punished by her father for acting out. Although she was sure he wouldn't mind if she proved that they deserved it. He was a strict man, not a harsh man. "So what do you think's wrong?" Kiba asked, his gaze locked onto a stray bird that had busied itself with patrolling the skies. Shikamaru hummed in thought for a moment before turning to him in response. "Not sure, maybe he got sick." Shikamaru responded in a reaching tone. Kiba mulled the response over for a moment before shaking his head. "Nah, no way. You ever seen Naruto sick?" he said with laugh. Shikamaru thought about it before he realized that Kiba was right. Well, Naruto-kun's never been sick before," Hinata muttered, looking down nervously. This statement had the downside of drawing the two boys' attention to her. "Well, I am mean," she stuttered, nervously pressing her fingers together. You am." "Whoa. Hinata, relax. We ain't making fun of you," Kiba laughed, patting the girl on the back in a sort of friendly gesture. Didn't really have the desired effect, as she was still blushing up a storm. "Damage control, Kiba. Damage control. Oh hey, look. Is that the place?" Kiba said, pointing at a run-down-looking apartment. Hinata snapped out of her daze, glancing at the building. "Genius, Kiba, genius." "Oh maybe not that one," Kiba laughed nervously. In retrospect, maybe the building covered in offensive graffiti wasn't the first place he should have pointed out. He tried to continue walking when he noticed that Hinata had stopped. "Hey come on Hinata, let's not stick around a place like this, we gotta find Naruto," Kiba tried reasoning, taking another glance at the building. The walls of the apartment building were covered with aggressive slurs, such as monster, evil creature, and even demon. It made Kiba sick just looking at it. He honestly didn't know what whoever lived there had to do to earn the wrath of the people, but it must have been pretty horrible. "Kiba-kun, this is where Naruto lives." The statement caught the two boys off guard. Shikamaru's eyes widened, before settling in disappointment. He was disappointed, not in anything she just said, but in the people of the village, to make him live in such a place. Sickening. Wait, Hinata, you're kidding ya?" Kiba said, his tone hopeful. Hinata's head was down, her hands balled into fists at her side. Her lack of a response was a loud indication of the fact that she was telling the truth. The boys turned back to the building again, truly taking in the sight of it. To them, they couldn't believe that someone as kind, loving, and caring as Naruto would live in such a place as this. It just didn't seem possible. "And Naruto-kun's always been treated like this. You both know it to be true," the Hyuga heiress muttered. They always insisted on calling him a M-monster. By this point the Hyuga heiress was shaking with barely restrained emotions, and anger was indeed one of them. She started walking forward, trudging up the dilapidated stairwell towards the top. She wasn't going to just stand around out here while her friend was hurting, it just wasn't who she was. The two boys shared a concerned look with each other, before quickly following after her, intent on checking up on their friend. The stairs creaked and groaned under their combined weight, the building's lack of general maintenance obvious. They passed by many different apartments on their way up. Hinata's assumption about the lack of residents spot on. Most of the doors they passed were broken down, exposing the old shadowy living rooms of times long gone. It was ominous, unnerving even, with the thunder pounding overhead. It painted a stressful scene, one that had the three ninja and training jumping at the slightest sound. As the trio approached the top floor, one of the weaker sections of floor gave way under their weight, resulting in what would have been a dangerous fall, if not for their twitchy nerves saving them from the pain. Kiba gave a weary glance to the newly created hole in the floor. The fall was easily 200 feet down, lethal for anyone not trained in the ninja arts. A nervous laugh escaped from him as he ushered the group forward a little faster, eager to get to Naruto's apartment and out of the rain. The one big pitfall aside, the three didn't have too much trouble scaling the building to reach Naruto. It was then that they reached his front door, and surprising to say, but his front was not in nearly the major disrepair that the rest of the building was in. The one main window was even still intact, unlike the ones on the back side of the building. It was also devoid of any graffiti, which was probably due to how dangerous it was to even reach his front door. Well, dangerous for a civilian anyway. The guy better be home, Kiba muttered, already shivering from the effects the rain was causing. Shikamaru was quick to act, knocking on the door and calling out his name. Naruto. Are you there? Shikamaru called out, his voice being drowned out by the rain. He waited for a moment, but no response came his way. Unwilling to give up so easily, he knocked again, harder this time. Naruto. Hello, he yelled louder, his voice echoing throughout the stormy night. He stood back next to Hinata and Kiba and wait, but after a few moments passed they knew they weren't going to get a response. Maybe the guy's not home, Kiba said, though from the way it sounded, he wasn't so sure of that himself. He would have said more, but stopped himself short when Hinata opened the door and let herself in. Concern quickly filled the minds of the trio at what they saw on the inside. Oh my, Hinata muttered, staring in shock at the destroyed interior of Naruto's apartment. His living room was trashed, with most of the furniture torn up badly. Pillows were shredded, leaving their stuffing strewn about everywhere. It looked as if something exploded in his living room. No. Hinata shouted suddenly, running headfirst into Naruto's house. Before the two boys could ask what had her upset, they spotted the shredded remains of Naruto's trademark orange jumpsuit littering the ground. Both Shikamaru and Kiba quickly joined Hinata, who was kneeling down next to the bloody torn remains of Naruto's clothes. Shikamaru stood back, his mind reeling at the sight. The blood was everywhere, but there was no sign of Naruto or his body. Shikamaru took a shaky breath to try and calm his racing mind. He scanned the room, looking for anything out of place. Then he saw it. There was fur littering the ground, untouched by the blood. It was a fiery orange in color, and it seemed to trail off into another room. Kiba, Shikamaru muttered quietly, gaining the other boy's attention. The feral-looking ninja in training was quick to join back at his side. I think there's something in here, he informed, pointing to the doorway that led to the small bedroom only a few paces away. Kiba was quick to use his nose, catching the scent of something else in the house, something distinctly not human, and yet, I think we should. Kiba, what are you doing? Shikamaru hissed as Kiba went to open the door. By this point, Hinata had stood up and joined up with Shikamaru again. Shikamaru would have tried to stop him, but he was more worried about what lay on the other side of the bedroom door that Kiba had just opened. The opened with a loud creak as the rusty hinges strained against the weight. Hinata's voice caught in her throat at the sight before her, her eyes cold livid, no matter what her brain said. In the dark, almost lightless room lay before them all a fox, a nine-tailed fox to be precise. Its crimson-colored fur shone in the darkness surrounding it, its tails coiled up to it protectively. It was large, definitely larger than any normal fox had the right to be. It was easily 3 times larger than Kiba's mother's ninja hound, and those dogs were huge. Its face was framed with 2 thick lines of black fur that started from the flare of the eye and extended all the way up into its ears, ending at the tip. Its face seemed to be pulled into one of extreme discomfort. Her eyes glanced down to the white claws that gleamed in the darkness, sharpened to a dangerously sharp point. The beast looked powerful and extremely dangerous, and yet, with it sleeping there, she found it beautiful in a strange sort of way. It also looked as if it could tear them apart in a matter of seconds, easily, yet that didn't deter her from thinking that it was cute in strange way, like a giant stuffed animal, very cuddly. Wait, is that? Hinata muttered suddenly as she caught the sight of something around the beast's neck, drawing the others' attention to it. They were quick to spot what she did. A white collar was situated around its neck, a collar that connected to the tattered remains of an orange jumpsuit belonging to one Uzumaki Naruto. How did that thing even? Kiba trailed off, too shocked to even respond properly. He turned back to Hinata, who was too busy not paying attention to him to pay attention to him. Meanwhile, Shikamaru's mind was racing. He was slowly starting to connect the dots as more and more things began to make sense. The attack from the Kyuubi no Kitsune 11 years ago was no secret, nor was the way that in its defeat it suddenly vanished into thin air. Many of the higher-ups knew the reason, but the main majority was left unaware. It was common knowledge, however, that the villagers of Konoha seemed to suddenly turn their grief into hatred, and that hatred had been directed at young Naruto. The explanation was unknown, but Shikamaru had deduced that it had something to do with Naruto's uncanny resemblance to a fox, with his whisker marks and more angular face and pointed eyes, that and had overheard enough people talking about it in hushed conversations that he could easily piece it together. That seemed like a very childish reason to direct all their hatred on him. But he realized that there was something more behind it, there had to be, and he believed that what lay before them was that proof. It seemed impossible, but it also seemed like it was the only thing that made sense at the moment. The other two had a similar train of thought, although for different reasons. Well, here goes nothing, Shikamaru thought, before surprising the other two as he walked towards the sleeping fox. Naruto, he called out uncertainly, teaching out towards the fox. The response he got, he would have to wait to determine whether it was a good one or not. Tightly closed eyelids snapped open, revealing the blood-red slitted eyes that lay beneath. Shikamaru flinched back from the suddenness of its reaction. Shikamaru would only call what happened afterwards as chaotic. As the second the fox's eyes opened, it started scanning the room wildly, as if looking for something or even someone, but when it couldn't find whatever it was looking for, it became greatly dismayed. No, 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 it spoke suddenly, the despair in its voice very apparent as it stood up, its limbs shaking under its own weight. Shikamaru and the others stood back suddenly as its tails began to wave sporadically, as if they had a mind of their own. The trio fell to the ground as a stray tail flew overhead, nearly taking Kiba's head off. This body is, what did he do to me? It started to cry out, slamming its claws to the ground in agony. They watched on in morbid curiosity as tears began to fall from its eyes before it fell back to the ground, its strength giving out. The tails that were flying around also gave out, landing back on the ground with a thud. Now the beast was left laying there, tired, exhausted, and emotionally drained from whatever problem troubled it. Hinata felt horrible as she stood there watching it struggle, unable to do anything to soothe the strange beast's woes. She couldn't help but compare it now to a puppet that had its strings cut as it lay there almost lifelessly. The energy it had seemingly sucked away. Silent tears fell from its eyes as it lay there, staring blankly at a wall, completely oblivious to the three humans next to it. Kiba was content to stay there and not move, and Shikamaru was busy trying to calm his racing heart. It was Hinata that dared to approach the beast after its little outburst. With her heart pounding in her ears and her breathing heavy, she shakily approached the fox with an outstretched hand. Hey there big guy, the Hyuga era said as she slowly inched her way over to it. Its gaze was still locked on the wall. The only sign that it even hurt her was the slight twitch of its ear. Deciding to try and push her luck, she continued closer to it, sneaking up at its side. She slowly placed her hand upon its head, gently petting the crimson fur. It was probably the softest thing she had ever felt in her entire life, and that was saying a lot. She could visibly see the tension in its shoulders start to fade away under ministrations, and its breathing began to slow. It was only then after it had calmed significantly that it actually took notice of the three people in its room, and more importantly, the supple hand that was petting its head. Her hand brushed against a large gem-like object embedded in his forehead, which was truly snapped him from his stupor. Its vision was blurred by the tears, but it clearly made out the shapes of three people it knew by heart. Red eyes panned up to meet the pale eyes of its friend, the Hyuga heiress, Hinata. Hinata, I wonder. His voice was dry and raspy, but still managed a deep dark tone. The trio's eyes widened as the fox spoke her name, and the reality finally struck them. The nine-tailed fox that lay weakened before them was none other than their friend they had been searching for, Naruto. His body trembled as Hinata swiftly brought him into a hug, as awkward as it was, but it meant everything to the fox. He tried to stand up, but his legs shook under his weight before he collapsed back to the ground. The other two were at his side without a moment to waste. Whoa. Alright. Let's not do that again. Kiba urged as he stopped Naruto from trying to stand up again, lest he hurt himself. The fox wearily turned to face the feral-looking kid. Kiba, he muttered, before turning to face the other member of the group. Shikamaru gave the kid-turned fox a lazy wave in response. What are you? He rasped out before being shushed by Hinata. Wo's hands were quickly putting him to sleep with how comforting they were. It's okay and Naruto-kun, just our rest now, Hinata said as she gently urged his head to join with his paws of the floor. He tried to resist for a moment before ultimately giving in to her order and laying back down. Hinata deftly ran her fingers over his frame, trying to get a feel for his new body. Kiba the point stepped back, running a hand through his hair. His mind was still reeling at the fact that his friend was somehow turned into a fox, or that his friend was always a giant nine-tailed fox. He didn't know which was the truth, but even then, that didn't stop him from acting when it was required of him to do so. An uncomfortable silence followed after that, with the only sound being the fox's tail slowly thumping the floorboards, over and over. An hour had passed since the trio found Naruto. After the initial shock wore off, the three ninja in training took it upon themselves to make sure that they did everything they could for their friend in need. For example, what are we going to do? Kiba asked out loud, glancing around the room with a nervous fervor, now that they knew Naruto was, well, Naruto. The reality of the situation started to dawn on them. What were they going to do? They couldn't spend the rest of their lives taking care of a giant nine-tailed fox. None of them even knew how to care for normal foxes, let alone this one. That problem aside, how in the world were they going to hide him? It wasn't like no one would notice that Naruto suddenly disappeared off the face of planet. People would notice. In fact, people had noticed. That was the main reason that they found him in the first place. They couldn't keep this a secret forever. The truth would eventually find its way to the light one way or another, no matter how much they tried to stop it. That, and the fact that they still had lives of their own to attend to. And it would be very hard to just vanish for random amounts of time every day without being noticed. In fact, the sun had already gone down a while ago now, and they could be sure that their respective families had noticed the that their children had yet to come home from school. If they didn't leave now, they would be in serious trouble. They knew that, and yet, one of them was having trouble pulling herself away. "Hinata, common, we've got to get going," Shikamaru urged, trying to separate the young heiress from the fox's grasp. Hinata was practically in tears at the thought of having to leave Naruto alone in the situation he was in. "But, we can't just leave him," she responded hotly, her eyes puffy. The pineapple-haired teen sighed in response, as he had already had this conversation with her once that evening. He knew he would have to play into her caring role to even attempt to pull her away from her friend in need. "I understand. But we don't have the necessities to care for him here. Do you even know how to care for a fox in general?" Shikamaru stated with a frown. Hinata pulled back at that. She really didn't want to leave him, but Shikamaru was right. Hinata didn't know how to care for a fox. More importantly, no one here knew what it took to care for a nine-tailed fox, so they wouldn't be of much help anyway. "Then Naruto-kun," Hinata prodded, shaking the fox lightly to gain his attention. He had been resting since, but woke to her gentle touch. He blearily brought his head around to face her. The way his eyes shimmered messed with her heart. I wish we didn't have tea too, but we cannot stay. I am sorry." But Hinata stated quietly, gently petting the massive fox in an effort to calm both his nerves and her own. But a fear began to take hold of his mind. He didn't want to be left alone again. What? Must you leave me like this?" His voice was shaky. Hinata pulled his head into her embrace in a vain attempt to calm him back down. Please don't leave me alone here. I think I will lose my sanity if I'm left alone, I suppose," he muttered quietly, which sounded quite strange, considering his deep growly tone of voice attained from the transformation. "We'll be back, you can count on it," Shikamaru chimed in, adding his attempt at assuring the fox. He pat the fox on his head, his hand getting lost in the fur. "Yeah man. We ain't gonna ditch you. We're here for you dude," Kiba assured in his own way, flashing a bright smile for effect. All of their responses helped assure him, but his heart still worried. "Now see, come on, you need your rest," Hinata said softly, her petting finally getting the better of him. He eventually started to fall asleep after some coaxing, and the trio silently snuck away. It was dark out, and they knew that it was going to be hard hiding this from their parents, but that wasn't going to stop them from trying, over everything that they believed in. Taking care of their friends was first as a priority. The next morning had not come quickly for the trio of ninja in training. The three of them had ended up staying up late the night prior, the events of the night keeping them from sleep. None of them were ready for the shock that they experienced that night, and what they witnessed would forever go down as one of their bigger life-changing moments. They knew that from that night on. Going forward things were not going to stay the same. When the three quietly made it out of Naruto's that night, they were suddenly assaulted with a painful realization. They promised their friend that they would help him in his time of need, and they weren't going to go back on that. But that didn't mean that they weren't getting in drastically over their heads, and they knew it. The realization of the bad situation they found themselves in weighed heavily on their minds, and they were terrified to say that they really didn't have any idea of how to fix it, or even help. It wasn't their fault that something horrible happened to their friend, but now it seems that his life was about to become even more intertwined between their own. The three ninja trainees split ways that night, vowing to regroup the next day to hopefully attempt to figure something out. Tired and emotionally exhausted, they went home, leaving their human-turned-nine-tailed fox friend home alone. When the next day finally came around, it was obvious to their parents that something had happened. Shikamaru had a nervous energy that he never had before, a definite difference from his usual lazy self. Hinata had been nervously pressing her fingers together the entire morning, more than she usually does. And Kiba cold hid the scent of fox on his body from his mother. Three separate families were aware that something happened, but were unable to place their fingers on what. They dismissed the oddities as nothing more than irrelevant issues. However, that did not mean that they weren't attentive now a bit more than usual. The three academy students grouped up early in the morning to have a bit of a discussion pertaining to their so-called situation. Keeping Naruto a secret was a priority they decided, one they would try to adhere to above all. Kiba proposed that he involve his older sister, Hana, in the situation, since she was one of the best local veterinarians. Well, it seemed like a good idea at first. Shikamaru was worried about how she might initially react to Naruto, but at the same time, they really needed all the help they could get. Whether or not Naruto actually required food or water remained to be seen at this point. The fox hadn't mentioned being hungry or thirsty at all, so maybe he was fine in that department. It was deemed irrelevant for the time being. Shikamaru realized that it was a risk that they were going to need to take. They were all too young and inexperienced to take on the ninja world alone. They needed the experience and strength of an adult that they could trust with their secrets. Of course, if this first attempt at gaining help went south, they doubted that there would be another chance. But Kiba wasn't too worried about it. He doubted that his sister would be that cold-hearted to their situation. That being said, "Hey Kiba-kun, are you as sure about this?" Hinata couldn't help but reiterate her concern about the decision they were about to make. The three of them were currently standing right outside of the Inyazuka clan's veterinary clinic, and last-moment jitters seemed to have taken hold of Hinata. Of course, Kiba was positive that his older sister would see things their way. "Relax Hinata. Sis will have my back for sure." There's nothing to worry about, Kiba responded with a laugh, attempting to ward off that little voice of doubt whispering in his ear. He was trying to act as if he was full of energy, but the black lines around his eyes gave away his bluff. Let's just go inside, Shikamaru muttered, stifling a yawn as he did. There was a clear slouch in his stance, more so than usual. Without any more delays, the three entered the building, walking up to the front receptionist's counter. The woman sitting behind the counter was another of Kiba's clan members, a woman that was friends with Hana. Hey, is Hana in? Kiba asked. The woman turned to face him, recognizing him immediately as Hana's younger brother. Hana? Yes, Shess, and right now, Shess not busy or anything, so you could head back and find her, she said with a toothy grin. I'm sure she'd appreciate the company. Cool, thanks, Kiba responded as the three of them made their way down to Hana's office. They made their way past a few doors before they came across the door to her office. Kiba knocked a few times before they got a response. It's open. Came the tough yet kind voice of Hana through the door. Kiba shared a quick look with the other two. Before opening the door, they opened the door to find Hana sitting at her desk, skimming through many different paper forms, all likely related to her patients. The woman gave one last glance at the papers before giving her attention to her unexpected guests. Oh, hey Kiba, didn't expect to see you here today. What's going on? Hana asked with a smile. Hey sis, we kinda need your help, Kiba said with a nervous laugh. The nervousness in his voice and the clear lack of sleep quickly caught Hana's attention. Alright, what's up? She asked. Kiba seemed to struggle with his words for a moment before responding. Well we kinda came across an animal of sorts that needs our help, but it's not really an animal, Kiba explained in a sort of roundabout way. Sorta more of a yokai animal. Hana blinked. Okay, well if it's a yokai I am not sure if, she paused, shaking her head before continuing. Whatever, I'll check it out for you, no problem, Hana responded, although Kiba's next response would confuse her. We can't. What? What do you mean you can't? She asked. Kiba struggled to find a way to convey what they needed without saying it outright, which was much harder than he thought it would be. Sensing his struggle, Shikamaru decided to take over explaining. What we mean is that he can't be moved from where it's at. We don't really know anything about taking care of one of its kind, and we were hoping that you would, Shikamaru explained. He wanted to get straight to the point and found no reason to beat around the bush right now. I see, if it can't be moved, then he'll just have to check it out with you three. You said you don't know anything about its kind. What kind of yokai is it? Why hasn't it come in for help on its own? She questioned seriously, preparing to pack her mobile kit. It's a fox. This time it was Hinata who spoke up, pushing aside her nervousness to help spread some clarity for the woman. The short burst of surprise on Hana's face was almost missed by the trio, but they still caught it. A fox, huh? I haven't seen many of those around here lately. I'm surprised a fox yokai was able to make it into the village at all, considering, she trailed off, grabbing her bag as she moved past the other three. I'm going to be out for a little. With a wave to the receptionist, Hana left the building with the three young ninja in training following behind her. So where is your little friend? Hana asked as they strolled down the road. At our friend's place over in the red light district, and Hess not little, Kiba informed with a laugh. Hana couldn't help but feel like they were purposely leaving something out, that, and the fact that they had a friend who lived in the red light district, really was a bit concerning. Then something else clicked. Wait, what do you mean Hess not little? She couldn't help but feel a little lost. What kind of fox wasn't small? It an adult. Why isn't it coming in on its own? Oh yes, about that. It took around 10 minutes for all of them to reach the red light district. Hana for her part was still trying to figure out why they were nose deep inside the scumiest part of Konoha. She also wanted to know why they personally knew anyone that would live in the area. It wasn't safe for a multitude of reasons. Sure, they weren't normal kids, ninja training and all that, but still. So where exactly are we going? Hana couldn't help ask again. Surrounding them were some old dilapidated buildings, some still in use, and one in particular not. Well, here actually, Hinata muttered, pointing at the graffiti-covered apartment complex. Hana's face fell at that. You can't be serious, she said lowly, hoping that she misheard. Now she recognized the place, if the graffiti didn't already give it away. This was where the Scourge, as the villagers so aptly named, lived. Now Hana never really gave the boneheaded rumors that the villagers passed around much thought, but that didn't mean that she also sided with Naruto. Personally, she didn't know the kid, and she never really wanted to, but she knew Kiba was great friends with him. She didn't spite him or anything, but she saw no need to introduce herself into his life. That being said, she had a feeling that it was about to change, whether for better or for worse, she had no way of knowing. Unfortunately, Shus right, Shikamaru spoke up before making his way up the stairs. Listen, just promise us you won't freak out, alright? Hana for her part couldn't help but hold back a chuckle. I've been a ninja for 4 years now, it'll have to be quite something to surprise me, Hana stated with a grin, but sure, I wouldn't freak out. Shikamaru rolled his eyes at her attitude before hopping across the broken staircase. Well then prepare to be surprised, with his piece said, Shikamaru opened Naruto's front door. Almost immediately Hana noticed that something felt off, like a presence in the air. It felt different than normal. Using her keen sense of smell, she picked up the overlaying scent of a fox and ramen. She glanced around, but it seemed like the only other people in the place was them. Where's your friend? Doesn't he live here? Hana asked. When she did however, she noticed that the mood dropped, so she wisely stopped asking. Alright then, where is this fox of yours? She asked seriously. Kiba was about to speak up when the sound of something falling over echoed throughout the apartment. In there, Kiba stated, pointing at the trashed bedroom door. With a small moment of pause, Kiba knocked on the door. Hey Naruto, beauty, you still in there? It's me, Kiba, he asked through the door. Hana just watched on in confusion. Wasn't Naruto the name of the fox kid? Why would, Hana mentally questioned, trying to piece it together, before that thought could go anywhere. The sound of something shuffling on the other side of the door was heard. She could hear loud deep breathing coming from the other side. It sounded animal in nature. A few moments passed in silence, before a voice sounded through. Kiba, Hana was a bit surprised by the growly sounding voice, as she wasn't expecting anything. There was a shuffling on the other side of the door following the voice, the sound of something large standing up. Hey dude, how you holding up in there? He asked, leaning against the wall. I am something I shouldn't be, must you wonder how I currently feel? I wonder, the voice barked back, before sighing. I'm sorry for shouting, he apologized. It's okay Naruto-kun. We're here now, Hinata spoke softly in an attempt to assure him that she meant the truth. We brought help with us, she knows about animals, she can help you. She was trying to keep him calm in the situation, all things considered. See, can we come in? There was silence for a moment before he spoke up again in a tired and broken voice. You may, I suppose. With that said, Hinata went ahead and opened the door. When Hana caught sight of who, or more importantly, what was talking to them from the other room, she suddenly realized why Shikamaru asked her to not freak out. Oh my god, they glanced back at Hana from her muttered response of shock, weary of how she'd react to finally seeing Naruto. She didn't know what she was expecting, but a living breathing nine-tailed fox was definitely not it. Hinata was quick to join Naruto's side, resting beside him. He was laying on the floor rather indignantly, his head down and his eyes downcast. All 9 of his massive tails were strewn about randomly in the room. From the way he lay so still, one could almost believe him to be dead. Were it not for the small shift from his light breathing, the lack of life in his movement was scary and worried the 3 academy students to no end. Hey buddy, we brought my sis over, she might be able to help you, Kiba said, taking a seat beside the fox. Naruto tore his gaze away from the ground to find Hana standing in the doorway in shock. From the smell he could tell that she was surrounded by animals, a lot, dogs in particular. So, what can you do? It was Shikamaru that spoke up, breaking the woman from her dazed state. I'm not, what? Her mind was still reeling from shock, and it took her a minute to gather her thoughts. Sorry, what did you need? Naruto, can you help Naruto? The giant yokai? He asked again, hinting to the 9-tailed fox laying on the floor. What? Hold on. She took a moment to gather herself. What the hell is going on? Shikamaru sighed, rubbing his forehead. That used to be our blonde-haired friend Naruto, and now has a damn 9-tailed fox. You tell me what's wrong here. Shikamaru hissed quietly so as to not disturb Naruto, although it didn't matter much seeing as his new large ears were much more than capable of picking up things. Okay, so how did this happen? She couldn't help but ask. We have no idea. Naruto didn't show up to the academy for a week, and we were sent to find him and we came across him in this state. Now you know as much as we do, Shikamaru grunted, crossing his arms. Please Hana-san, can you help him? Hinata pleaded, turning to the woman. Hana for her part took a deep calming breath before nodding. Alright, I'll see what I can do, but making him human again I cannot, she spoke softly, setting her bag down, approaching him slowly. Hana knelt down in front of him, reaching a hand out to pet his head. Alright champ, let's see what's wrong, she spoke softly, running her hands through his surprisingly soft red fur. Please refrain from calling me champ in future dealings, Naruto muttered dejectedly. Hinata smiled at the return of his usual attitude. Around an hour had passed since they arrived at Naruto's place, and in that time Hana had been going through with a medical checkup on the fox as best she could, but with a total lack of knowledge on the subject that was a 9-tailed fox, she was forced to rely on her knowledge of normal 1-tailed foxes and pray that the two had similar genetics. So far they were similar in most places, save for the obvious differences. However, it became apparent that his body was not fully flesh. She could feel the ambient red chakra wafting off his form, and a quick medical jutsu scan revealed to her that he was partially physical while simultaneously constructed of chakra. How is this possible? Hana breathed. While the checkup was in progress, she had Naruto try to explain to the best of his abilities what he remembered from the past week. That was where they ran into something. He explained that his memory of the past 2 weeks was fuzzy at best. He said that it hurt to remember, and for the time being they let it drop. As for the examination itself, she didn't run into too many problems. His teeth and claws were clean and strong, not to mention sharp as hell. His vision was perfect and much sharper than she expected. His breathing and heart rate were fine. Blood pressure wasn't high, at least she thought so. No nerve damage suffered, and his sense of smell was stronger than even her own. His muscles were very strong as well, probably to hold up all the added weight of his new body. So far the only problem she ran across was the mental trauma suffered from whatever or whoever did this to him. It didn't seem like he required food at all. There were some other things she wanted to check, but decided against it for the time being. Perhaps a more private checkup later to cover some more personal issues. So, how is He? Hinata asked quietly, calmly petting Naruto's head that was resting in her lap. Naruto was resting now after finishing the checkup. He couldn't sleep, despite his best efforts, so he lay there, eyes staring blankly at a wall. Well, all things considered, Hess in perfect health, at least I believe so anyway. Hana's sure and yet unsure response couldn't help but come off as a little off-putting. I've never worked on a nine-tailed fox before, so that's the best answer I can give right now. She wished she had more to offer, but that was all she had at the time being. Maybe if she learned more about the inner workings of his new body, she would be of more assistance. But, Hess not she struggled for words. His body is partially constructed out of pure chakra, don't ask me how, because I have no goddamn idea. So what do we do now? Kiba asked, looking up to his sister. Hana took in a deep breath, letting the silence hang for a moment before responding. I think the Hokage needs to know of this, she said with a frown, turning back to the massive sleeping fox. Are you sure? You know how much the villagers already hate him, Shikamaru responded. If we hide this from him, then that will only produce problems later down the line, she said back. He needs to know now, before someone else finds out first. They have him hidden here only for the time being. They have no way of knowing if and when someone else would come by to check up on him. No, their best bet would be to inform the Hokage as soon as possible. Do you believe, pray tell, that they will ever view me any different? I wonder. Naruto muttered dismissively. Hinata blinked in surprise at his sudden statement. I can't answer that, Hana stated. Shaking her head she returned to the previous conversation. I don't believe the Hokage is that busy today. I want you three to stay here while I go and speak with him, Hana said, standing up as she began to gather her things back into her bag. What? No way. We're coming with you. Kiba responded, standing up to join her. The look Hana started, only for Shikamaru to interrupt. No, Hess right, we're coming with, I believe it will help, Shikamaru said. Hana sighed, seeing as they weren't going to take no for an answer. They all turned back to Hinata, who clearly wasn't going to move, if not because of the fox resting on her lap, then because she just wanted to stay with him. Please. We're his best friends, I'm sure the Hokage will understand, Kiba urged sincerely. I'll stay here with Naruto-kun, Hinata said quietly, petting the fox. I think he needs the company right now, she muttered softly. Alright then, we'll hopefully be back soon. Come on you two, let's get moving, Hana stated, already heading for the door. Kiba and Shikamaru shared a quick look before following after her. With them gone, that left Hinata and Naruto alone, a Hyuga heiress and her nine-tailed fox. It was around noon in this village of Konohagakure, and a quiet air had settled around the Hokage's tower. The old man for his part had been held up finishing old paperwork from the night prior and had only just recently finished. He had no important meetings scheduled today, so the rest of his afternoon was open. The day would be the first day in a while that he had almost completely free and he was going to spend that time wisely. It's days like this that I wish you were still here, he muttered quietly to himself, taking a longing look at an old family photo on his desk. With a tired sigh that could only come from a man of his experience, he reached for his hidden cigar stash. He was about to light it when his intercom went off. Okage-sama, we have one Hana in Yazuka here to see you, she says it's urgent. His secretary chimed in with an oddly cheery tone. With an annoyed sigh he dropped his cigar and lighter as he pressed the button to respond. What does she need? He asked with a grunt, already feeling a headache starting to form. She says it's about Naruto, Hokage-sama, she informed. The other side of the comm was silent for a moment and the secretary thought that he might have hung up on her. Hokage-sa. Send her up, he interrupted suddenly after a long pause. With the go-ahead given, the secretary permitted the trio passage through to his office. While they made their way to his office, he sat silently pondering what the reasoning behind the Inyazuka clan leader's daughter's sudden unexpected arrival. His secretary said it was about Naruto, so it was either bad or really bad, not anything against a boy. The world was too far against him for it to almost ever be anything good. Both parents die at his birth and has the Kyuubi sealed inside him. Villagers hate him because of their misplaced hatred. What's next? The Kyuubis unleashed on the world again. Too much for anyone to mentally handle all at once. A knock at his office door broke him from his downtrodden thoughts. With a sigh, he signaled his hidden Anbu ninja to let them in. "Enter," he announced. A moment later the doors opened, and in walked Hana and two others who he recognized as two of the young clan heirs. "Ah, Hana and Yazuka, what brings you here today?" "Okage-sama," the woman said with a respectful bow. "I'm sorry to bother you suddenly, but it's extremely urgent," she said seriously. "So I heard, what's this about young Naruto-kun?" he asked, resting his head on his hands. Hana straightened out a little at his question, trying to think of a way to properly answer. "Well, to be frank, Hokage-sama, we have a problem," Hana started. The Sandamai leaned forward giving her his attention. "It's an issue revolving around his predicament," she said, motioning to her stomach, the same place the seal that which the Kyuubi was contained in resided on Naruto. Suddenly the Hokage was serious, and with a subtle hand signal he ordered his Anbu to put up a silencing seal around the room, preventing any sound from getting in or out. "Alright then, Hana and Yazuka, I'm all ears. What is wrong with Naruto?" The air in the room changed, and a tense feeling settled. The Hokage was serious now, and any joking would do no good with him. When it came down to the safety and well-being of his surrogate grandson, he did not mess around. Hana for her part could feel all of her and Yazuka-driven confidence being driven away by the look the Hokage was giving her right then. She needed to let him know that she was on his and Naruto's side, not the side of the blinded villagers. With all due respect, Hokage-sama, I'm not here to get Naruto in trouble," Hana said carefully. "Nor am I here to break a certain law," she stated, hinting towards the law that prevented anyone from openly speaking about the fact that Naruto contained the Kyuubi. She could see the Sandami's features soften at her words, and she carefully continued explaining. "Earlier today, I was informed of Naruto's current predicament by these two here," she said, motioning to the two young clan heirs behind her, who had up until now stayed respectfully silent. "These two, along with their little Hyuga heiress, trusted me enough to inform me of a worrying situation that their friend Naruto found himself in." The Hokage turned his attention from the Inyazuka to the two younger kids. "Is this true?" He felt like he already knew the answer, but as the Hokage he had to ask them anyway. "Why yes, Hokage-sama." The two responded together. The old man sighed before straightening out. "Okay, so what happened? What kind of trouble did he get himself into this time?" he asked, concern starting to leak from his body language. "Is he okay?" The silence that followed his question was concerning, and the way the three looked between each other was not a good sign. Well, as for medically speaking, he's fine. The problem is, I don't really know what constitutes as fine for someone partially constructed out of pure chakra." The Hokage practically choked on his own spit at her sudden announcement, and he had to take a moment to figure out whether she was serious or not. He stared her in the eyes and found no amount of deceit in her. There was also no hidden hatred for young Naruto, only worry and concern. "I'm sorry, could you please elaborate?" The old man coughed out the demand. He didn't want to believe her. There was no way that what she said could be true, yet as he sat there watching her stand straight, he almost knew it to be true. Fuzzy, nine tails, furry, teeth-sharp red eyes, big. Kiba decided to be the one to further explain to the Hokage, and colorfully explained everything. Shikamaru facepalmed in the background, dumbstruck as to why Kiba was the one offering the explanation. Although he had to admit that he pretty much covered everything in the span of 5 seconds, poorly handled as it was. "Well, I think that pretty much sums it up," Hana muttered, narrowing her eyes at her younger brother for embarrassing her in front of the Hokage. The three patiently waited for any response from the Hokage, knowing full well that he was just assaulted with a surplus of information without any breathing room. "Odd, how did this happen?" he asked quietly, suddenly seeming older than he was. The three looked at each other uncertainly. Not one of them actually had the answer to that question. "We don't know, none of us do," Hana responded, unsure of how to really treat the situation. "Where is he now?" he demanded, searching under his desk for his all-seeing glass orb. "He's sleeping on the Hyuga princess at his apartment," Hana responded with arms crossed. Hirizen's eyes softened at her response. At least someone was caring for the young boy, young nine-tailed fox. Just thinking of that hurt him. The man crossed his hands in a hand seal, activating the so-called crystal ball. Not a moment later the visage of an apartment room appeared, and in it was a nine-tailed fox that was sleeping alongside the pale-eyed princess. Hiruzen seemed stricken when he lay his eyes upon Naruto. He had wanted to believe everything that Hana was saying was a lie or maybe misinformation, but there was no tricking the crystal ball. "Is he?" The man struggled to find the right words. "Is that still him?" he asked, his eyes glued to the image. He silently begged and pleaded with anyone willing to listen to his plea, that the innocent boy he knew and loved was still in there, and not gone. "I don't think I can answer that truthfully. Before today, I've almost never interacted with the kid." Hana spoke with a frown. She wished she had more to offer to the aged Hokage, but that would have to suffice. "Hokage-sama, if I may," Shikamaru spoke up suddenly, using Hana's lack of knowledge as a way to interject into the conversation. The man didn't respond verbally, but nodded at him anyhow. I believe that is still the same Naruto that you know. When we first found him, he knew who we all were and only calmed down after we reassured him that we won't leave him, Shikamaru explained. Retracing the recent events, Hokage-sama, has keeping calm right now. He freaked out at first, but Hinata seemed capable of making him docile. The pineapple-haired boy related, confusion marring his last words. Docile? Hiruzen repeated in concern. That didn't sound good. He may have thrashed his apartment a bit. Kiba laughed nervously. The Hokage looked like he was going to have a heart attack at the mental image. But don't worry, Hess, chill now. The boy hurried to add in, his nervous laughter dying down. Silence followed the boy's statement, and the two boys stepped back to let Hana control again. Hana looked as if she had more to say, but nothing more was to be said. What more could she say? What more was there to say? She decided to let the Hokage decide when to speak again and hoped that he had something positive to say about the situation at hand. Hiruzen let out a long strained sigh, clasping his hands together in front of him. He closed his eyes tight before opening them and staring at the three before him. Whatever was currently running through his mind, the trio had no idea. Leave me, he spoke quietly, but not lacking strength. Kiba felt like he wanted to say something, but stopped at the look his sister gave him. I need to be alone right now. His eyes weren't on them, inside staring at the wall behind them. Of course, Hokage-sama, Hana bowed, pulling the other two to the door. She stopped on her way out at his words. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. He spoke again, his tone soft. Hana offered him a nod. Before leaving him, the door to his office closed and his gaze drifted back down to the all-seeing crystal ball on his desk. A nine-tailed fox, he couldn't believe it. He had always feared that the seal might weaken someday, but he never even considered something like this happening. A few traits that resembled the beast he contained at most. Not this, not turning into a nine-tailed fox completely. How was this possible? A question that would probably plague him for some time to come, and no answer seemed available. But one thing was for certain, Naruto was in trouble, and his internal crisis could wait. More important things needed to be taken care of it seemed, and everything else could wait until later. He could worry about the problems this new problem could and would cause at a later point in time. He stood up, donning his hat, before paging his secretary. Cancel all of today's meetings, I'm going out, he stated firmly, not waiting around for a response. Yes, Hokage-sama. The sun hung high in the skies of Konohagakure, depicting a warm and welcoming afternoon day for the village residents. However, it was misleading in the sense that today had already been and was likely to continue being stressful. The locals filled the streets, bustling around to and fro happily, completely oblivious to the potential return of their most feared enemy. Hiruzen sighed. He had really wanted to keep it that way, but he knew that there was no chance that anyone would ignore the Kyuubi's second coming. He was about to have his hands full, more than he already did, and he didn't know who was to blame for this. It really was quite distressing. At this very moment he was on his way over to young Naruto's house, hoping and praying to anyone willing to hear his plea that the boy he knew wasn't gone. He knew that he was being hopeful, but he couldn't help it. If Naruto truly was gone, then whoever was responsible was going to suffer a painful end by his hands, mark his words. But if that innocent boy was still in there, still in control, then no one, not even the damned council, was going to stop him from doing what he should have been doing since day one. That boy needed him right now, needed others too. He could at the very least offer that. He owed the boy's father that much. Hiruzen let out another sigh as he spotted Naruto's house up ahead. It was time. He signaled his Anbu that were trailing him to wait in standby for any further orders. While he made his way up to his front door, the three he talked to earlier had been sent ahead of him, and he found Hana standing near the door. Hana, Hiruzen greeted with a nod. Hokage-sama, the feral-looking woman greeted back. How is he? He asked quietly, patiently waiting for an answer. Hana seemed to let out a breath before responding. Fine, all things considered, but there she seemed to pause, has become despondent. There's a sense of hopelessness around him. She trailed off, giving the Hokage a helpless look. I don't know, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen's shoulders seemed to sag as he sighed again. I see, he muttered, quietly thinking for a moment. What's he doing right now? He found himself asking, staring listlessly at a wall while being comforted by the little Hyuga princess. The woman responded with a frown, crossing her arms under her chest in habit. Hiruzen frowned at the answer, but it couldn't be helped. Hokage-sama, if I may? Hana asked, getting a nod in response. She continued, I've only observed him for a short time now, but, from what I've seen, Princess in there is the only one that brings him any comfort. I don't think it'd be a good idea to separate them for long, she informed seriously. Ah, thank you for informing me, Hiruzen said, filing that bit of information away for later. Now, I've come to see him, he stated. Hana nodded before leading him to the room. He stopped short of opening the door, taking another breath. He knocked. This was a trying situation, and he needed to approach it as such. Simply barging in would do nothing but cause tensions to rise. He could feel Hinata almost jump in surprise from the other side of the door. Hello? Was there? Hinata called out from within the room, from where her voice came from. It was clear she was underneath or behind something large. Hinata Hyuga? Hiruzen asked through the door. The girl hummed in surprise, but quickly responded, "This is Saratobi Hiruzen, may I come in?" "Oh, yes." The doors open, the girl called out. A moment passed before the door opened, and the Hokage walked in. The old man's suspicions were confirmed when he found the girl resting under the fox's large arm, as she deftly ran her fingers soothingly up and down his ears. The fox. Hiruzen didn't think it would be that easy to come to terms with that fact, but, after having to witness it firsthand, his heart quickly reached the realization that this fox could not in any way actually be the Kyuubi itself. There was no deception in the fox's, in Naruto's heart. He could sense no underlying hatred or burning venom trying to be concealed. Something he was sure the real Kyuubi would have a hell of a time trying to hide. No, all he saw was Naruto, but what he saw still worried him. "Naruto-kun, Hokage-sama is here to see you," Hinata urged softly, trying to get the fox's attention. At first it seemed like he wasn't going to respond, but then he finally tore his gaze away from the wall and turned to Hiruzen. The first words out of his mouth cemented the truth in Hiruzen's heart. "Oh, finally came to check in with me? I suppose." Naruto's deep voice grunted, his eyes staring into the Hokage's. The statement stung like a knife wound in his shoulder, but he deserved it, had left Naruto on his own for far too long, and now it had become apparent that had suffered because of it. But when he looked into those red eyes, he was reminded of the night that Konohagakure was almost lost, but he knew that those eyes now belonged to someone else, and the only one that ever dared to call him out like that was Naruto. "Naruto, my god boy, how did this happen?" Hiruzen breathed out, stepping closer to him. An enraged look seemed to take over the fox's eyes, and Hiruzen realized that he just stumbled across something serious. "Naruto," he started seriously, "who did this to you? You expect me to believe this is unrelated to you? I wonder," Naruto barked, eyes blazing. Hiruzen visibly recoiled at the statement. "Naruto, my boy. What are you saying?" Hiruzen asked, hurt, the fox's snout scrunched up, eyes tightening. "You have the gall to ask, insisting you do not know. Do your Anbu not operate under you? I wonder." He growled. Hiruzen's eyes widened in horror. "Snake is your ninja, is he not?" he stated, his anger fading away under Hinata's ministrations. "He did this to me, make him fix his error." "Naruto," Hiruzen said slowly, his voice gravely serious, "did this snake wear a mask?" The others might have thought the question unimportant, but to him it meant everything. Naruto nodded, re-cementing Hiruzen's fears. "Did this mask resemble a serpent?" Another nod. "Damn it," Hiruzen cursed silently, someone wearing an Anbu mask, of course. It was no wonder Naruto trusted this man so easily. Naruto knew that the Anbu served him, and so he trusted them, but to make it worse, this Anbu actually had the knowledge to back up his disguise as well. Truly a bad situation. Did he ever take his mask off? Hana suddenly spoke up, offering a question. Naruto's furry brows squinted in thought, trying to recall. "Yes, I do recall his face," Naruto muttered. "However he took a growling breath to try and calm himself, reveling in the comfort brought on by Hinata's roaming hands. He had white skin, dark hair, and his eyes were like a snake. I apologize, I cannot remember anymore." I suppose the fox struggled to recall anymore, but the Hokage had heard enough. "Shh, it's okay Naruto-kun." Hinata could sense that speaking about the man hurt him, and this interrogation wasn't helping him, but for all that, Hiruzen now knew without a shadow of a doubt who the perpetrator was, and he was not happy. Naruto visibly calmed under her touch, something only Saratobi had noticed. "Orochimaru," Hiruzen muttered to himself, too quietly for anyone else to hear. Well, besides Naruto, as his ears twitched at the sound, the Hokage stood up suddenly, gaining everyone's attention. "Naruto, my boy, I'm sorry, it seems I've failed you again. The man that did this was not working for me," Hiruzen said with a sigh, raising a hand to silence the fox that was about to object. "But I've had enough of sitting on the sidelines. I know I can't fix this, but I'm going to try and make it better. I've got a meeting to summon, I won't be long." With that said, he made his leave. The group watched him leave, a strange sense of relief building inside them. Naruto wanted to shout at the man as he left, but he just couldn't bring himself to, without the man saying it in words. He knew that Hiruzen felt himself to blame for what had transpired. If it was anything, he knew that Hiruzen was done messing around now, far too late to stop what had happened, but perhaps he could give the aging Hokage another chance. It was the early afternoon now, and Hiruzen had just finished sending out a notice to all clan leaders. He was calling for an abrupt and unexpected meeting between them all. He hated to have to bring them all in on such short notice, but it couldn't be helped. With a tired old sigh, the head of the village let out a puff of smoke from his pipe. It was days like this that made him pick up smoking again, a bad habit that he couldn't seem to break away from. He knew that it wouldn't be long before every clan head was gathered together under his roof, so he was currently busying himself with trying to find a way to appropriately broach a sensitive topic with them. That being said, he had a feeling that nothing he said would make this any easier for all parties involved. "Welcome in, Naruto has become every civilian's nightmare, and I have no idea what to do. Any suggestions?" He mused out loud sarcastically. The man felt like slamming his head into his table. He just couldn't believe it. Well, he could, but that was besides the point. The day he let his deranged student go rather than stopping him when he had the chance, he knew that one day it would come back and bite him in the ass. He was just selfish enough to hope that he'd be dead by then, let the younger generation deal with it. Yeah, because that worked out so unbelievably well the last time he did that. Brand new young Hokage dies not even a year into his position, leaving his child alone without another parent to care for him. That worked well, didn't it? I'm going to be in this seat until it kills me. He knew it to be true. No one currently residing in the village was deemed an acceptable replacement for the god of shinobi. His top Anbu was extremely powerful and skilled, but didn't possess the right mindset for the job. His own son was off on a practically permanent mission guarding the fire daimyo, and tension had been placed between them for years. Then his other student, who he really hoped would take up the seat, decided that the village was just too much for her and left it. Honestly, he didn't feel like he could trust anyone here with the position yet. But that being said, he knew that if push came to shove, Kakashi, his top Anbu, would take the spot if needed. Hiruzen just didn't want it to come to that if he could help it, as the young man in question already had been dealt a bad hand since early on in his life. The old man was interrupted by the return of his Anbu, the Spec Ops ninja appearing with a small swirl of air. The ninja bowed before offering his report. Okage-sama, the man said with an air of professionalism, everyone you ask for has been alerted. They should be arriving shortly, he informed, with his piece said. The ninja disappeared back into the shadow of the room. The old man let out a sigh, setting his pipe down. People knew that he only used it when stressed, so he felt it better that he not. Barely a minute passed before a knock sounded at his door, signaling the first arrival. Come in, he ordered. The double doors opened with a creak revealing the leader of the esteemed Hyuga clan, Hiashi Hyuga. The man was well groomed and adorned in a very bland yet powerful kimono. Okage-sama, Hiashi greeted with a respectful bow, the tone of his voice neutral. Hiashi, Hiruzen returned. The rest should be here any second. Following his words, the sounds of other people arriving could be heard. Ah, there they are now. Through the open doors a small group of people walked in, quickly taking note of the tension. The group consisted of the inquisitive Inoichi Yamanaka, leader of the mind-reading Yamanakas, Shibi Aburam, the quiet head of the clan of chakra insects using ninja, Choza Akimichi, a large man with an equally large heart, and the current leader of the big-boned Akimichi clan. Beside him was his best friend and longtime teammate, Shikaku Nara, probably the smartest man in battle tactics inside the entire village. Standing off to the side of the rest was a pretty white-skinned black-haired woman, her pitch-black eyes a trademark of her clan. She was doing her best to appear professional, but the stress could be seen in her eyes and the placement of her hands as they fidgeted with the hem of her kimono and constantly readjusted her glasses. She was the representative of the famed Uchiha clan and was doing her best to not bring any shame to her family name. The Uchiha were prideful people at the height of their power. But, after 99% of their clan were wiped out in a freak accident 2 years ago, only her and the heiress to the main family remained alive. With the heiress not being of age, she was forced to take up the role as temporary clan head and advisor to the young heiress until she could handle it all on her own. That being said, she was a mere newly minted chunin at 16 years old when the massacre took place and had no skills in politics whatsoever. Whatever her plans for the future were completely disregarded in favor of quickly learning to take up her new role as head. She struggled heavily, but she never gave up her duty to defend and properly take care of the young heiress, even when it wasn't beneficial for her. Strutting her way into the room only a few moments behind the rest of them was the beautiful yet wild-looking woman, Tsume Inyazuka, single leader over the entire dog-like Inyazuka clan. The woman was referred to as the clan's mother figure and had the protective attitude to follow it. Her long brown hair was spiked and untamed, and a dark purple lipstick adorned her lips. With her arms crossed under her breasts, a frown formed on her face. This better be important. The first words out of the brown-haired woman's mouth were typical of her attitude, and Hiruzen let the remark go unpunished. Seeing as everyone he asked for had arrived, Hiruzen let out a sigh. Alright, seeing as everyone's here, I can begin, Hiruzen started, his gaze taking in the room. To be brutally frank, we've run into a big problem. He spoke seriously, yet his tired gaze explained a bit more to those paying attention, and I do not have the ability to care for this situation without making more of an issue. Okage-sama, Hiashi questioned, his tone practiced but still concerned. For the Hokage to be serious as he was, something definitely had to be up. This problem revolves around Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. I'm sure everyone here knows about him. With that short sentence alone, everyone in the room was forced to realize the importance of the situation at hand. The fact that Hiruzen would so easily break his own spoken law about not talking about said Jinchuriki was worrying, to say the least. The Uzumaki boy. Yeah, I think I speak for us all in saying we know about him, Tsume said with a thoughtful frown. Something happened to him, didn't it? Current clan head to the Uchiha said nervously, readjusting her glasses again. Leave it to the Uchiha to point out the obvious, even though it was true, Hiruzen sighed, but nodded to her statement. Yes, sadly you are correct, Hiruzen stated, and I am partially to blame for this, he sighed, leveling them a tense look. It seems that my past mistakes have finally caught up to me and are once again causing a problem. Past mistakes, Hokage-sama, you don't mean, Inoichi prodded, his mind already connecting the dots. The only past mistake Hiruzen ever really dwelled on the most was his student-turned-criminal. Orochimaru, he stated, the room seemed to tense at the name of the traitor, without me ever being made aware of it. Orochimaru managed to infiltrate the village and get into direct contact with Naruto, alone and unsupervised. I believe this happened days ago, and I've only now come to learn of it, and the problem that has arisen because of it. Days? You mean to tell us that traitor has been wandering around the village unsupervised for days now? Choza shouted in shock. It was a terrifying thought, and dwelling on it brought no comfort. I'm afraid so. After gaining access to the village, he sought out Naruto. I don't know exactly what happened after that, and here Hiruzen took a shuddering breath. He somehow turned Naruto into a nigh-perfect representation of the beast he was supposed to contain. Dead silence pursued in wake of his statement. Inoichi looked as if his mind had just short-circuited, his face twitching in shock. The look of utter horror that crossed Shikaku was probably the most emotion that anyone had managed to pull out of the man within the last decade. Hiashi was trying to keep a level head, but the tension around his shoulders told a different story. Chimza's face had gone white. What? However, it was Tsume that broke the dreadful silence, her shout rocking the walls. The woman grabbed her hair. He did what? She repeated loudly, her shout shocked Cece, the woman dropping her glasses. Right now, at this very moment, Naruto is at his apartment, being watched by the only ones that he trusts. The list of people is short, those on it being your daughter, Hiashi, and both your sons, Shikaku, Tsume. Sadly, I do not think I am on that list any longer, Hiruzen stated. Hiashi practically fell out of his seat. Hokage-sama. You left my daughter alone with a nine-tailed fox. The Hyuga leader's question echoed throughout the room. Hiruzen winced. Perhaps he shouldn't have put it in such a way. Yes, I did, but that wasn't going to stop him now. Naruto is holding himself together quite well, all things considered, but I've seen that legendary anger shine through the cracks, and for some reason little Miss Hyuga's touch calms him down. I'm afraid that more than just the body came with this horrible transformation, as I believe some of the Kyuubi's legendary anger may have come along with it, as well as other things. With that little tidbit of information, Hiashi was forced to sit back and think. What are we going to do? Inoichi's question brought the main issue at hand back to the forefront of Sarutobi's mind. Back to the main point, with this new situation unfolding, we have to deal with it quickly and quietly. I want to get to this before anyone from the civilian council gets word of it. As it stands now, Naruto is not a registered ninja yet and comes under the civilian council's control, the old man stated, leveling the problem on the field. As he is now, do you honestly think that Naruto will allow himself to be trampled by the council? Tsume retorted. No, but I don't want it to come to that, Hiruzen stated. However, quickly thinking of a response, CCS spoke up. Hokage-sama, if I may? She asked, readjusting her glasses again. At his nod of confirmation she continued, if you were to make young Naruto-kun a ninja, he would fall under your control. CCS spoke quietly, as all eyes turned on her. Yes, interesting. I'll have to do it in quiet. I will need multiple clan leaders present to do this however, otherwise proving this in the council would prove troublesome, Hiruzen said, a grin starting to form. Brilliant, I knew calling you all here would aid in solving this dilemma. CCA blushed under the Hokage's praise, but hid it by readjusting her glasses again. Hokage-sama. Shikaku interjected, even if this goes to plan, I would still suggest we place Naruto somewhere where he would be supervised, he reasoned, but was quick to continue at the face Hiruzen pulled. I suggest this for his safety and our own assurance, nothing else. You mentioned his anger issues, and I feel this is a good way to study and help him following his rather abrupt and unwelcome change. He followed up, and, if this change were to be permanent, we would require the information to assist him through his trials. Silence persisted following the Nara clan head's rather pointed observations. Hiruzen hated to say it, but everything Shikaku said was correct. He didn't know nearly the extent of Naruto's problems, nor any way to deal with them currently. He had no idea how he was going to have to move forward following this, and this was exactly why he had called this meeting in the first place. Hokage-sama, may I suggest you transfer Naruto into my care? Hiashi spoke up, bringing all eyes on him. If everything that we've learned here today is true, then having him placed into the care of the Hyuga clan would offer him protection from any unwanted visitors, as well as having him within close proximity to my daughter. It was hard to tell, but they detected that Hiashi wasn't too happy about it. Even then, he was a man that had lived through tough times before and knew when to not let his own personal feelings get in the way of things. If no one here has anything else to say about this, then I have no reason not to go along with your idea, Hiruzen stated. When no one spoke up, he nodded to himself. Following this, Hiruzen reached under his desk, pulling out a document. It was a bundle of papers pertaining to Naruto. From here, he would be adding a few new documents to go alongside the others. Yes, he planned on getting the legal problems out of the way completely first and foremost. He was not going to allow himself to be blindsided by anything the council could throw at him when they learned of this. I suggest we change his name, less connection to who he really is for the people to use against him. The suggestion came from Choza. Perfect, now I just need all of your signatures. At his word they all signed the document. Once the ink dried, he sorted the papers back into the folder and returned it to his desk. As of right this moment, he is officially a ninja of Konoha, he stated, though they could detect a hint of something in his words. With his piece done, he fell back into his seat, a sigh escaping him. With all said and done, the sheer fact of what happened really started to settle in. I believe we should leave this at that for now. I want to reconvene in a week to further discuss this, Hiruzen stated, leveling a look at everyone. They all mulled him words over silently, before offering him their support. With that they made their leave, with only Hiashi staying behind to further cover Naruto's new living arrangements. 2 hours later Hiruzen returned to the apartment, and with him a small group of his personal anbu. Now usually that won't be seen as a good sign, but the reassuring look on his face served to calm any building worries in their hearts. Within a few minutes, they had gathered up all of Naruto's remaining possessions, forgoing all of his clothing for very obvious reasons. Hiruzen didn't want Naruto to have to stay in the ruined building for any longer than he needed to, and as such had planned to move him immediately. This building held bad memories that he was sure wasn't going to do him any good by sticking around. By now Hiashi has most likely finished the temporary living arrangements at the Hyuga compound. Tsume had offered him a bed made for their own ninja dogs, and suggested that it might work for Naruto as well. All of that combined, and with the fact that Naruto was also going to be rooming with Hinata, not much space was left in the room. Hiashi noted with a sense of dread that if Naruto was going to become a permanent house guest, that some redecorating, as he put it, was going to be in order. The idea of his daughter and a nine-tailed fox in a small enclosed space just didn't sit well with him, but he would suck it up and deal with it for the time being. From the times Hess experienced with the boy since he was little, he felt like he could trust him. And besides, if he wasn't able to separate them before, then he wasn't going to now. Now all that was left was for them to transfer Naruto to the Hyuga compound without alerting the entire village. Without much struggle, the group had managed to sneak Naruto all the way to the Hyuga compound unnoticed. It was as if a weight had been removed from their shoulders as they crossed the gate into the walled compound. Here he would be free from those hateful glares he had become so accustomed to, at least that's what he was told. Come this way Naruto-kun, Hinata urged with a soft smile as she led the massive fox with her movement. They had just passed through the gates, and the adults had stayed behind to briefly cover a few things with the Hyuga guards that stood by. Hiruzen laid it out quickly and rather pointedly. Besides him and select others, no one was allowed inside the walls for safety reasons. Besides Shikamaru, Kiba, and Hana, they had been very briefly informed by Hiashi himself only an hour ago, so they went along with what the Hokage said fully. While they did that, Naruto wandered off after Hinata, his eyes never leaving the back of her form as she walked. She wanted him to follow her, so he followed her. It felt right to listen to her words, to follow her directions. For the first time in his life, he was fully convinced of at least one thing, that he would follow this little girl to the ends of the earth and back, no questions asked. It was strange that even he himself didn't question it at all. But something about her, who she was, the way she talked to him, it just all made sense to him. For as short and painful as his life had been up to this point, her delicate little hands could take that all away instantly. He had no idea what he had done to earn her love and care, but he would forever protect her to repay her affections. She had always been there for him, even in his childhood days. And her scent, it was familiar, more so than it had any right to be. It was strange, but as a fox, a sense of smell meant so much more than it did when he was human. She smelled of soft lavender. Years ago when he used to get lost in the woods, crying and hiding, the smell of lavender would pervade his senses, and like a wave of soothing energy, had calmed down. Now, that same smell and calming energy hit him like a bolt of lightning, and the effect was so much stronger. He knew that it was her. She was the lavender that pervaded his nose and took total control over him. And now, even when he felt scared of his new body, concerned of this new challenge, and worried of how he was going to be treated by the same village that he lived in, he could become swept away by it. Every time those thoughts began to assault him, her smiling face would come to mind, and the feeling of being near her would stop those thoughts. And earlier, when the bitter anger filled his heart at the thought of Snake betraying him, it was her calming presence and soft roaming hands that took that anger, and that hatred and sadness, and threw it away. He would be strong, for her. Naruto had no idea, but Hinata had accidentally cast a spell on him with her own body alone, who she was as a person had purchased his allegiance, and one day she would come to understand the full weight of what her body and mind could do to him, but for now. There, Naruto-kun. Hinata's soft voice broke him from his trance he had been placed in. He blinked rapidly, looking to her pale lavender eyes. Yes. he responded, standing there waiting for her to continue. The girl was momentarily shaken by the devotion contained within his sharp red eyes and almost completely forgot what she was about to say. This is my room, father said that why y'all be staying here with me, she said, and his eyes were drawn to what stood behind her. He knew that Hinata was royalty. But behind the girl was two fancy sliding doors that led to a large open room that looked like it was fit for a prince, yet now that he thought about it, she technically was a princess in a way. The Hyuga were extremely rich people, so it was no shock that they treated the daughter of the clan head so highly. But even then, this is your room, I wonder. He breathed out, stunned. Hinata nodded beside him, bringing a delicate hand to her chin. Father insists that it is too small, she noted offhandedly. Naruto almost tripped over his own paw claws at her statement. Ignoring his bewilderment, she moved into the room, and he followed her in moments later. Off in the corner was a large pillow-like bed, designed to be on the ground. Naruto gained the feeling that it was for him, or Hinata just enjoyed relaxing on massively oversized beds. Oh, Hinata hummed as she noticed a small note resting on the large pillow. It was signed Sumin Yazuka. Nothing more was on it. I think someone got this for you, she said, setting the note over by her desk. Naruto moved to the pillow, catching a quick whiff of it. It had hints of dog on it, but it seemed to have ever been used before. His eyelids grew heavy and he suddenly felt tired. A large yawn escaped from him as he curled up onto the massive pillow and curled up like a cat. His massive tails curled around him. Over beside her desk, Hinata had lit up a candle. It was lavender scented. As he drifted off, his mind couldn't help but be drawn to the thoughts of the most recent events. Only a few days ago he had been a human, and as much as they tried to convince him otherwise, he felt like he had been turned into a monster. How could anyone accept him as he was now? They already hated him, and now look at him. I don't want to be a monster. I suppose his whisper was so soft Hinata almost missed it, but I shall suffer it. She turned to him, but he had already fallen asleep, apparently finding solace in sleep. Her face softened as she gazed at his. You are not a monster, she whispered, before quietly returning to her desk. The next couple of days around the Hyuga compound were tense, to say the least. Surprisingly, there was no open hostility like Naruto had been expecting, but that didn't mean that he was treated like royalty. No, the Hyuga were people that prided themselves on the way they acted and how they were seen by others. It was hard to tell when they were mad or when they were happy, when they had all been taught to keep their faces neutral. Whenever a servant would come to give something to Hinata, he would catch the look they sent him. It wasn't hostile, but it was closer to concern and fear. He was used to hatred. He knew the anger and how to better deal with angry people. But fear? He couldn't stand it. The looks of fear and worry that most of the servants wore around him angered him. It wasn't his fault that he was turned into the Kyuubi. As a side effect of their fear, he had taken to staying locked away in Hinata's room just to avoid the looks that the servant girl sent him. Did they not understand? Were they not capable of realizing his circumstances? Or perhaps, did they not care? He didn't know, and it angered him. The way he was treated did not escape Hinata's view, and she had taken it upon herself to help him come to see him differently. That being said, it wasn't easy convincing others that he wasn't a monster that was hellbent on murdering them all in their sleep, seeing as he nearly perfectly resembled the beast that years ago had done just that. But that wouldn't stop her from trying. After a week of her constant but gentle prodding, she had managed to get him to leave the room and follow her to her garden just past the living quarters. He had to admit that after only an hour outside with her, the garden had quickly become another one of his favorite places to find solace. The quiet little creek that passed through carried a variety of different fish, and sometimes he'd catch himself just laying there next to the water, watching as the fish swam by. Sometimes some of the servants would pass by and see him and almost trip over themselves in shock, but when he paid them no mind, the fear slowly began to subside. When it became apparent that he wasn't planning anything with ill intent, the constant fear nipping at their minds slowly began to fade away. The real breaking point happened one day when a servant woman was walking through the garden with her young daughter. The Hyuga woman had been teaching her daughter about the role she would end up growing into. Being that she was born under the branch family, the girl had innate skills with caring for plants and would most likely become the one the main family would use to care for the massive gardens. But when the little girl saw Naruto sleeping next to the creek, she had strayed from her mother's side and ran up to him. By the time she noticed, it was already too late to stop her. Hello, she spoke out, only a foot away from his face. He opened one eye at the sound, blinking curiously at her. She leaned close, her wide eyes glittering in innocent curiosity. He eyed her form lazily, noting the fact that she was probably only 4 years old. He was about to speak up when his heart seemed to skip a beat. Her tiny little smile beamed up at him, and for some reason, a faded memory bubbled to the surface. The memory of a little girl calling him her father. But before he could dwell on it any further, it vanished from the forefront of his mind, slipping back deep into the recesses of his mind. But, are you okay, Mr. Fox? The little girl peeped nervously, for, after locking eyes with her, tears had uncontrollably started falling from his eyes. Why you're crying? Are you hurt? Naruto blinked, trying to clear his eyes. Oh, I'm sorry, I suppose, he muttered softly. I don't know what happened. Seeing that he was fine, her smile returned with a vengeance, her cute wide eyes sparkling with childlike wonder. "How did you get inside Hinata-sama's garden?" she questioned with a small tilt of her head. He almost laughed at her question, but instead hummed in response. "You could say that I live with her." In fact, he responded with a gentle smile. He lay there quietly, watching her face. For the moment she realized, glancing behind her, he spotted who could only be the little girl's mother, nervously shaking and too afraid to move closer to her girl, lest she anger him. He snorted at her reaction to him and turned his focus back to the girl. Suddenly her eyes widened and he could see the realization light up. "Oh. I didn't know Hinata-sama had a pet fox," she admitted with a genuine smile, her eyes closed. He had to hold back a laugh, her face was just too precious, yet he didn't refute her claim. "Can I pet you?" she asked, leaning in closer, glancing back to the mother that hadn't moved. A sly fanged grin grew on his maw. "Sure, I can indulge you in your cute little wish," he responded as he moved his head closer to her. The little girl gently ran her hands over his head, giggling gleefully, then suddenly he opened his mouth wide, and when the woman thought that she was about to watch her own daughter get eaten, he licked her. Hey. That tickles." She laughed, continuing to pet him. His grin grew as he saw the woman nearly pass out behind the girl. For some reason he found immense joy in toying with others and didn't feel like stopping. He kept licking her giggling fueling his assault. "And no. Stop," she squealed, using her little hands to try and stop his tongue. When it became apparent that he never held any hostility against them, they were forced to change their opinions of him. The catalyst was the little girl not afraid to approach him, and her mother that watched from a distance. If Naruto had truly been evil, then no one could have stopped him from fulfilling her nightmares. But he wasn't, and that day, when the Hyuga servant woman witnessed the massive nine-tailed fox gently playing with her daughter, her little girl's glee-filled giggles filling the air, her eyes were opened. She knew then that Naruto wasn't in fact the monster the village would have them all believe, but instead a lonely creature that longed for company and wanted more than anything to be seen as something else. Anything but a monster, even with claws that could so very easily rip someone in half, and teeth that were made to tear and maim, muscles that held the power to crush rocks and nine tails that could move so fast they could break your neck if they hit you. He never hurt her, not once did he hurt her, even slightly. By the end of it, he had been on his back rolling around with her sitting on his stomach giggling happily, and she was totally unscathed, and that was the thing that put a genuine smile on his maw, not that fanged grin he'd use when he was toying with someone. After that day, the woman didn't fear him anymore. Every once in a while she would be walking through the garden with her daughter, and he'd be there. The girl would ask to be allowed to play with him, and Shes let her go, knowing that she'd be safe in his company. She'd sometimes leave her with him all day, so she could attend to her own duties. When others took notice, they too began to see him differently. It didn't change over the course of a day, but he could say without a doubt that things had begun to drastically improve inside the compound. Unseen moving throughout the day, he wasn't greeted with fear, but with similar responses given to actual people. That is what made him happy. But this newfound trust placed in him by the people living in the compound, he had been approached for his first assignment personally by Hiashi himself. Being that he was technically a ninja of the Leaf Village, he was allowed to take missions for it, whatever it may be. He was made aware of this fact when Hiruzen himself came by only a few days into his new residence to give him his ninja headband, the thing which proved as his proof to anyone wanting to know that he was in fact a ninja. Hinata had it tied around his neck, almost like a collar. Not that anyone pointed that out. Hiruzen had also asked him to come up with a cover name for his file, assuring him it was to protect him, to which he almost instinctively responded with the name, Kurama. It wasn't questioned, and was put in paper. At this point in time, Uzumaki Naruto was considered publicly missing, and Kurama was entered into the system as Hinata Hyuga's official guardian protector. But now, around a month into his newfound living conditions, he had been given a mission. Hiashi, alongside the Hyuga elders and some of the main branch family, that included his personal guards, had an outside issue to deal with. However, this required them to leave the village to hopefully resolve this problem, being that it was connected to another village entirely. It would most likely take a week entirely, if they counted travel time. With that thought in mind, Hiashi had entrusted the safety of his two daughters to him. Now some had thought him crazy, but he knew just what he was doing. He had been keenly watching Naruto throughout the past month, and felt his choice was justified. That wasn't enough for some, but it wasn't up to them who to trust his daughter's care to. When he told Naruto about this, the fox couldn't help but feel elated. The fact that someone as high as the leader to the Hyuga himself held such trust in him, it touched his heart. Ed promised that nothing would even touch them as long as he lived to do anything about it. But that said, everything went off without a hitch. The day came and went for them to leave, and Naruto sat there at the gated entrance, watching them go. Soon it had been just them. Now with his first mission laid out before him, he didn't plan on failing it. As such, he had decided to spend all of his time with both the girls. This would also be the first time that he really got to spend any significant amount of time with Hinata's little sister, Hanabi. The little Hyuga was a spitfire for sure. She had the energy and sharp intellect that would serve her fully later in her life, but right now, he could safely say that she was cute in the way that she tried to be so serious. Time seemed to fly by quickly once they all left. Hinata often spent her days training to pass the quickly approaching Ninja Academy exam. She didn't plan on failing it, and she wanted to prove that the Hyuga weren't allowed to fail something like that. Those days Naruto would spend sitting on the side, his sharp red eyes watching her. Oftentimes Hanabi would come to watch her bigger sister train, hoping to learn something sooner than intended. Hinata had begun to notice that Naruto was often prone to losing himself in thought when staring at her for long enough periods of time. She didn't think much of it, and he never said anything, but sometimes she'd catch a look in his eyes that she couldn't ever place. Soon enough, 3 days had passed quietly, flowing in their usual ways. However, as this 4th day began to wind down, something happened. Naruto-kun, I think that's enough for today, Hinata breathed, leaning over panting heavily. She had been training with Naruto in the training hall for the past hour. She had been training by herself for a while then, but being alone only ever got you so far. Naruto was always with her, and one day she had the idea to have him train with her. He had at first refused, on the account of hurting her, but she eventually got him to break. The first quote-unquote training session they had quickly put Hinata in her place. The moment the match began, head moved at speeds hard for her to track, and she found herself pinned to the ground underneath one of his paws. His size made anything like that child's play. Her embarrassment was apparent, but she only had herself to blame for challenging him to a battle. He wasn't some legendary ninja, and had only received training similar to her own. However, owning the body of the strongest creature within thousands of miles gave him speed and power that he'd likely spend the next many years learning to control properly. It just so happened that some instincts had carried over, and simple moves were easy to pick up. He just wasn't great at using them. Training like this continued for a while, Naruto purposely holding back to at least give Hinata a chance against him. It would be considered a victory if she was in any way, shape or form capable of dodging his first lunge. Suffice it to say she wouldn't be winning a battle like this anytime soon. But after an hour of doing this, she was dead tired and dripping with sweat. Her usual dress stuck to her body uncomfortably, and she was having trouble breathing. Meanwhile, Naruto was sitting in the middle of the room happily, his tails waving about in an almost unnatural pattern. But when Hinata spoke up, he knew that training was done for the day. Finally giving up, I wonder. He hummed happily, which sounded off all things considered. Absent-mindedly he grabbed a towel with his tail and handed it to her. With a quiet thank you she dried off. Why yeah, wonder all you want, MD done for today, she wheezed out. I'm going to need a bath, Hinata stated, looking down at herself. See, can you go get Hanabi for me, please? She needs a bee bath too, she asked, even though he would have if she ordered him to. He nodded before walking away at a comfortable yet brisk pace, his footfalls making small echoes as they padded across the wood floors. It only took him a minute to reach Hanabi's room, but when he did, he immediately noticed that something was off. He couldn't put his claws on it, but Hanabi, he called out quietly through the thin door, mindful of the fact that it was late and many others were likely sleeping. When she didn't respond he frowned. It was then that a scent hit his nose, the scent of someone he most certainly didn't recognize. In an instant, the door was flung open, his eyes searching for her. There was a flash of steel in the darkness of night, and he was caught off guard as a blade of steel wedged itself straight down through his snout and out the underside of his jaw. The fox's shout of pain was cut short when his ability to open his mouth was removed. Blood flew across the room, painting the white walls red. Standing in front of him was a ninja dressed in black, his face shrouded in shadow. Bonded by rope and draped over his shoulder was Hanabi, unconscious. When the ninja realized that he failed to kill him, he went to rip his weapon back, but it was stuck. Blinded for a moment by the pain, Naruto jerked back, stumbling into the light of the moon and hitting one of the main supports. With his mouth filled with his own dark red blood, locked closed painfully by a blade, he growled in rage, one tail whipped out like a spear, stabbing at the unknown attacker. Naruto could feel the man's eyes widen in shock as he barely managed to avoid getting skewered. He went to shout for help, but the weapon lodged in his mouth prevented that. Unable to alert everyone that there was an intruder, he began to slam his tails into the hardwood floor, hoping that it was loud enough to wake everyone up. Suddenly the ninja whipped out a handful of kunai before flinging them at him. This time around, Naruto wasn't about to be caught off guard. He raised a tail to block the weapons, the sharpened throwing knives lodging themselves deep into his tail. Blood flew into the air, but Naruto never took his eyes off the enemy. This stranger had broken into his house to steal the girls, and for that, he would die. But more than that, an overwhelming sensation suddenly filled his mind, tearing at the forefront of his very being. This sensation called for murder. It told him to tear the vile man down, reduce him to ashes, annihilate him from existence. It whispered in his ear that he was going to pay, and Naruto would be the one to carry out that command. Kill him. Before he kills her. Before he takes them from you. Do not make the same mistake again. Do not fail like I did. And Naruto found himself unable to refuse the ghastly words flying within his mind. Words that sounded far too similar to his own. With his cover blown, the ninja took to the rooftops, Hanabi in tow. Naruto growled furiously, blood spilling out of his mouth and pooling on the ground below. His own pains were pushed to the side in favor of rescuing Hanabi. With powers he wasn't previously aware that he possessed, his powerful legs propelled him to the roof of the compound, claws digging small trenches in the shingles. The ninja narrowly avoided a stream of hellfire spewed out from the maw of death, his cloak instead being incinerated. Naruto's eyes narrowed with a cynical precision, jumping forward with speed outclassing the ninja. The man made the single mistake of looking back at him. In the darkness of night, covered in his own blood, was the terrifying image of a nine-tailed fox, reaching out to rip his head off. He slipped, his foot just missing the next roof. Instantly Naruto was upon him, multiple tails flying forward and wrapping him in a chokehold. By this point the entire compound had been awoken by the sounds of fighting, and multiple Hyuga had ran outside, dressed in bedclothes. What is going on? Someone shouted. The ninja tried and failed to escape from Naruto. As his tails wrapped around each of his limbs, he was forced to watch as he failed, and the Hyuga leader's daughter was taken back from him. Standing atop the roof of the main branch family's house was Naruto, who cradled the now conscious Hanabi in his 3 tails, while the other 6 held a firm grasp of the unknown ninja. The Hyuga guards were quick to react, as they joined Naruto on the roof with spears. With the enemy safely detained, one guard moved in to take off the ninja's mask. When it was revealed who it was, all the Hyuga's hearts hardened. It happened to be a ninja from Kumo, the village hidden in the clouds. So, Kumo has stooped low enough to try to attempt this a second time. One guard accused, brandishing his spear, "We should kill him where he stands," he said. But before he could, Naruto pulled him in close, face to sword-lodged snout. The fear in the man's eyes was obvious. It was also then that they all noticed how badly Naruto had been hurt in defending Hanabi. "Urli ifi is for feed." He growled so lowly that the man nearly lost control of his bowels. Naruto's voice echoing throughout the entire compound. Even with his maw shut closed, he still managed to growl out a warning. "Three should kill you weary Ayu stand." The pure killing intent he was radiating was similar to the feeling of the night the Kyuubi attacked. Suddenly the tail wrapped around his throat tightened dangerously, the man's face turning blue, flames capable of reducing him to ash, seemed to leak from the fox's maw like living fire, reaching out their death-dealing fingers, wanting nothing more than to end the man. "Naruto-kun." The shout echoing throughout the compound stopped him cold, maybe only a second or two from ending him. He snorted fire, before finally relenting, he dropped the man to the ground unceremoniously, only for him to immediately be detained by the 20 Hyuga that surrounded him. Once the threat was thoroughly dealt with, Naruto jumped down from the roof landing on the ground below with a thud. Hugged close to his furry chest was Hanabi, crying her eyes out. "Hanabi-sama." The servant women shouted in worry, running to Naruto's side. Naruto carefully handed the girl to them, promising her care to them. "My god, Naruto, are you alright?" one guard exclaimed, bending down next to the wounded fox. Naruto Wolf responded, but he was too busy glaring murder at the ninja that had attempted a kidnapping. He was still contemplating if he should just destroy the man now. "Naruto-kun." Hinata's horrified shout rang out as she came running from the opposite side of the compound, sliding up next to him. Oh god. Who did this to you?" she whispered, before taking his head into her hands. She rubbed calming circles around his cheeks, trying to take away some of the pain, as they carefully removed the sword from his mouth. But he wasn't whining in pain, nor had he even implied he was hurt at all. It was as if he was in a trance, a defense mode, focusing wholly on the threat directly in front of him. It took a while to calm him down after that, but she eventually did. When Hanabi ran to her side for comfort, she learned of what happened. There had been an attempt to kidnap her sister, and Naruto had thrown his own life at the enemy just to get her back, going as far as taking an entire sword to the face, just to safely return her to her family. That changed everything. From that moment onwards, Naruto was treated like one of their own, and not as an outsider. If anyone still held any form of resentment to him, the reminder of just what he suffered for them washed that resentment away. Naruto wasn't the Kyuubi everyone thought him to be. 3 months passed in their quiet ways after that crucial defining moment of his life. The man that had attempted to steal Hababi just so happened to be a missing ninja. After betraying his village, he had been banished from ever returning, but in a moment of distress, he had gathered it in his head that if he were to offer a Hyuga to the village leader, he would be allowed to return, of course. When Kumo was informed of this, they refuted that they had any part in the matter. But after everything was said and done, Naruto put the man as far out of his mind as possible. Just thinking of him brought up a fear he didn't ever want to consider a possibility, the fear that despite his actions, that one day the people he cared about would be taken from him, and the sinking sensation that it had already happened once before, like a fever dream that assaulted his mind as he slept, showing him a reality he never wanted to see come to fruition. But he displayed to the world that night he would die before that possibility was allowed to happen. Following the incident, the Hyuga were forced to realize that they had become weak in the safety of their walls. Training regimes would end up taking place after that in the hope that this would never happen again. Naruto had become even more protective of Hinata following what happened, and sometimes she would have to calm him down, lest he accidentally kill someone he thought held ill intent against her. The amount of love, respect, respect and adoration he held for her was something else. She didn't think he thought that way of her, but she learned that he would do literally anything she asked of him, no matter how embarrassing, nor how shameful, nor revealing, nor dangerous or illegal, he wouldn't disobey her request. Perhaps it was due to his isolation from birth that he took to anyone that offered their affections, that combined with the loving and caring soul that she possessed, and his heart was stolen by her hands. She literally had the power over him to calm him or incite certain emotions and physical feelings out of him via her soothing voice alone. She hadn't ever considered herself anything more than just another Hyuga, but his loving care and passionate determination in her stead made her feel like a queen, and she slowly became addicted to his treatment of her. And now, 3 months later, the Ninja Academy exam had arrived. Naruto had gotten comfortable enough around her that he could stomach being around other people that weren't part of the Hyuga clan. Outside the compound walls, Naruto was a different person. The loving and caring fox the clan had come to know would seemingly vanish when he left the compound's walls. The respect he had for the Hyuga main and branch family were not shared with those outside the walls. The village of Konoha had yet to prove to him why he should care and had done nothing to create a bond with him. The village was also the same as it was when he was a child, full of people that inexcusably hated his very existence. His time spent outside the company of the wide-eyed people was anything but pleasant. The other reason he began to follow her was because he couldn't stand being alone for long anymore. The days where Hinata would be gone all day and he'd be stuck at home, he'd be struck with impending panic attacks. It made him feel as if he had been forgotten, left behind in the dirt. Being alone terrified him because it left him with his thoughts. Hiruzen still wanted him to keep a low profile for as long as he could. Turns out that with his new body, constructed partially of pure chakra, he was able to shape-shift. It was similar to a transformation jutsu, but it was real. He was seemingly only capable of shrinking in size for the time being. But even though he looked small, it didn't necessarily mean he looked like a regular fox. It was obvious to anyone looking that there was something unnatural about him, whether it be the human-like frown that he wore, or be it his emotive facial expressions, the sharp-slitted red eyes or deadly teeth, or those shiny white claws of his. Hinata just found it surprising that they never put 2 and 2 together. Not that she minded then, nor did she mind it now. She was currently at the Ninja Academy, sitting in the center of class quietly, but Naruto was outside, resting under the shade of a tree, for obvious reasons, had become strangely separated from people. He had always been bad with crowds, but ever since the incident, his want to surround himself with other people had begun to diminish. Hinata knew that she could force him to interact with others, but that wouldn't be right. The result of such an experiment might be bloody. Her eyes gazed out the window, spotting him sleeping under a tree, a frown on his maw. Perhaps it would be different when she was placed on a ninja team. She highly doubted that he would not accompany her on any mission outside the village. Doing so would force him to talk with people, and she could only hope that it would help him see others differently. She just wanted him to be happy like the way he made her happy. She hated it when she found him alone by the creek, staring at his own reflection, deep in thought, or the days where he'd be staring off into the clouds for hours straight. She never knew what occupied his mind during those moments, but she had a deep-seated feeling that it wasn't good. So distraught with her concerns of her nine-tailed fox, she had completely missed the entirety of the speech Iruka had prepared for them. It was only when everyone else in the room began to leave that she realized that the time for the test had come. She quickly caught up with the group, meeting together with them in the courtyard outside the academy. Her mind was still occupied with her fox, and so she missed Iruka calling to her until he was standing directly in front of her. "Hinata, are you ready?" Iruka asked softly, giving the girl a concerned look. The Hyuga heiress blinked in surprise, looking up to Iruka. Everyone else had taken the test and either passed or failed, except for her. She took another glance back to the shade of one of the many trees that lined the academy grounds, finding Naruto resting quietly, watching her from the shadows. My apologies, Iruka-sensei." Hinata bowed quickly, before moving to the center of the training ground. She had quickly completed the simple ninjutsu required to pass, and easily surpassed the quick test. Her attention was split between her success and ascendance to a ninja, and the prominent depression the one she cared about suffered from. She barely registered that Iruka wanted everyone to return 2 days from then for team assignments. While all those that passed the exam celebrated behind her, she left them behind in favor of rejoining Naruto. She walked up to him quietly, sitting down beside him. He was doing it again, staring off at nothing endlessly. She frowned before reaching out to him. "Naruto-kun, what's wrong?" she asked softly, patiently awaiting his response. He huffed hot air out through his nose, but didn't respond. She frowned in concern, but quietly waited for him to make a response. She could see it in his eyes, in the way his face was tensed up. "Naruto-kun, please, I can't help unless you tell me what's wrong." Hinata gently pushed. Sorry, I suppose, he suddenly responded, almost catching her off guard. Before she had the chance to ask what he meant, he continued, afraid, he said, his voice deathly quiet in that moment. Hinata's face scrunched up in confusion. Oh, of what? She found herself asking, almost afraid to learn the answer. Of losing you. His response was as down to earth as it was loving. He turned to face her, his gaze locking with her. She could see the unguarded fear that filled his red orbs, exposed for her to witness. I believed that the safest place around would be here inside the compound, surrounded by a ninja village, but even then, you weren't safe. Suddenly his eyes began to glow with a hateful wrath, and a snarl marred his features. That man tried to take everything away from me. He tried to take her. His anger abated, replaced with worry. He tried to take you. A little overwhelmed by the fact that this was the most he had spoken in a while, she quickly came to terms with what was truly bothering him. He was afraid of losing her. Kumo's an ally, Naruto growled, before laughing ruefully. Didn't stop them from stabbing us in the back, I suppose, he grunted, his eyes glowing moodily. Naruto-kun, Hinata muttered, unsure of what to say. They said it wasn't them. But how much of that is true, I wonder? He responded, she had to agree with his point, but some people are different, not all people are evil. It hurt her to see him so torn over this, but she had a feeling that it wasn't going to be a simple fix, no matter how much she wanted it to be. I'm not evil, she muttered. His eyes softened. No, you're not, you could never be, he muttered, seemingly in a daze. The image of her laying on a deathbed flashed across his mind. You could never be. Naruto-kun, Hinata tried, concerned over the look that passed over him. He seemed surprised at his own trailing thoughts, blinking rapidly before turning to her. Forget what I said. I'm sorry for worrying you, I suppose, Naruto sighed, putting on a smile for her sake. Come now, your father wanted to speak with you when you graduated, he said as he stood up. Hinata watched uncertainly as Naruto took to the rooftops of building, stopping to wait for her to follow. Hinata sighed, staring at him as he left. She went to leave as well, but someone stopped her. He didn't look too happy. The rather obvious yet concerned statement came from none other than Kyuubi, who had been listening in from around the corner of the academy building. Hinata turned to face him, her face downcast. What happened? The wild-looking teen asked, arms cast lazily behind his head. Hinata at first thought it better that he didn't know, but quickly decided against that. That's still upset about the incident, Hinata muttered. He seems incapable of getting over it right now. Kyuubi rolled his eyes, as if it were obvious. Well, that much is obvious. The guy cares too much about you to let shit like that slide, Kyuubi pointed out, as if that settled it all. I cold imagine what he was going through that night, but Hess tough, I'm sure Hess fine. A small smile seemed to finally return to her face after that. Kyuubi looked up, spotting Naruto watching them from a distant rooftop. He was ready to leave, but unwilling to leave Hinata alone. The Hyuga princess sighed. Before making after the fox, Kyuubi just watched in silence, throwing up a thumbs up to the fox. A stupid show of friendship got a small smile out of the yokai. The air in the office room was tense and heavy, to say the least. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat behind his desk, a smoke pipe hanging from his mouth. His attention was drawn to the window beside him, drawing a perfect view of the entire village from its angle. He'd rather get distracted by the small things like that than constantly face down problem after problem. However, being the Hokage meant that you couldn't afford that luxury. Sad thing that it was. It was still early morning, as the sun was just on the horizon. Had been waiting in his office for a small amount of time now, and his patience had been faithfully rewarded. A knock on the office doors broke his thoughts and pulled his mind to a focus. Come in, he ordered, the tired lull of his aging voice echoing through the doors. The doors opened, revealing the ninja behind it. A tall man dressed in sage-like garb entered the room, his long white mane of spiked hair shifting with every step. The click of wood on wood filled the otherwise quiet space as his Jetta connected with the floor. Jiraiya, good, you're here. Hiruzen commented from his seat. The Hokage clasped his hands together gently, his face stressed. We have much to discuss, you and I. The other man, Jiraiya, crossed his arms with a deep frown, marring his battle-hardened features. A silence pursued following Hiruzen's words, Jiraiya seemingly unwilling to offer a word in edgewise. Jiraiya, I know you probably don't want to talk to me right now, but this is of the utmost importance. Hiruzen tried being tough, his voice hardening. But the emotion wasn't there. The sage's frown only seemed to deepen. I've been driven up a wall, and I've no idea what to do. The aged ninja tried, but still got no response. He could always order the man to talk to him, but that could be the true nail in the coffin that finally pushes him away too, just like the others. A leader to a village of ninja I can be, but when it comes to folklore and legends, well, I always left that part to you. Hiruzen sighed, running a hand nervously through his hair. Honestly, as of late, his skill in controlling the village seemed to be slipping. You two were always the ones that properly understood the stranger things in life. His voice trailed off, but with Tsunade gone, that left you. I know there's many a mistake I've made in my day, But the old man's words were cut off when finally, after the one-sided conversation pressed on for too long, Jiraiya decided to speak. Decided to contact me only when you felt it absolutely necessary, the man spoke, arms crossed and a hard look drawn across his face. Jiraiya has been conveniently kept out of the loop and had only just recently been informed of the situation. The reason behind why wasn't the big issue he was dealing with, however, of course, letting me know that, while I was away doing stuff for you, my godson suffered something no one saw physically possible wasn't relevant enough for you to let me know. There was a bitter look of resentment on Jiraiya's face, and Hiruzen was ashamed to say that he couldn't dare meet his eyes just then. He knew that something along these lines would happen, were he to tell Jiraiya about the unfortunate circumstances Naruto had found himself in, but he had hoped that he could resolve the problem himself. Needless to say, his hopes were dashed when he realized that he knew absolutely nothing about the physical nature of the mythical nine tails, nor how to deal with one. It was clear that Naruto was still relatively the same, mentality speaking. But, after a few weeks of late-night research, Hiruzen came to the conclusion that there was much more to Naruto's new form and the Kyuubi than he felt comfortable with. There was years of legends and myths and encounters had with the mythical creature known as the Kyuubi, all recorded in some way, shape or form. Many had believed, himself included, that the nine-tailed demon fox that attacked that fateful night was just that, a demon, a being hellbent on killing all in its path, caring nothing for the lives that it took in its rampage. It would be all too simple if that were the case. The world of the ninja knew more in dealing with the Buju than in dealing with the creatures of mythology. Hiruzen had nothing when it came to that topic, but Jiraiya did. Jiraiya wasn't the sage of the warrior toads for nothing. The man had his fair share of mythical interactions and much more knowledge on the subject than he. You don't understand the severity of the situation, Hiruzen chirped back, but was quickly rebuked. Of course, but I would if someone thought to inform me beforehand. Apparently being a godfather means nothing anymore, the toad sage growled. He refused to let the old man off easily. Hiruzen sighed, rubbing his temples aggressively. That isn't important right in. Don't you dare tell me what is or is not important right now. Jiraiya shouted, slamming his hands onto the Hokage's desk. I don't care. What I want to know, Hiruzen, is how one of the biggest criminals in the Land of Fire was able to single-handedly infiltrate Konoha and gain direct access to my godson. This went on unnoticed for days before anyone caught a whiff of foul play. Jiraiya felt like his eyes were going to explode, the tightness in his jaw extreme. He just couldn't fathom the stupidity of it all. Of course, your men never even found out in the first place. You left it up to a civilian girl and her buddies to find out. I thought you ran a ninja village. The longer Jiraiya went on, the more Hiruzen realized the error of his ways and just how badly he had screwed up. It was one thing to see it and another to have it yelled at him from his student. You'd think the container of the wildly unstable nine-tailed goddamn fox would be someone to keep tabs on. I wasn't about to treat him like a criminal. Always watching him, waiting for him to snap. Hiruzen shot back, who was Jiraiya to question his decisions? And look where that got you in the end. Jiraiya spoke deathly quiet, his hard gaze never leaving Hiruzen's. The old man tried to fight it, but he knew in his heart that everything Jiraiya said was absolutely true. He knew that he screwed up badly, but he didn't want to believe that he couldn't save it himself. But, he realized, you couldn't save something you already lost. Hiruzen slumped in his chair, defeat washing over him. He ran his hands through his hair, his gaze falling to his desk. I messed up, he admitted lowly, his driving effort to defend himself dried up. Yes, well, we already covered that, Jiraiya said with a frown. So now, let's cover how we're going to go about fixing it. I don't think you can reverse this. There's no need to come crashing down immediately, Jiraiya grumbled, crossing his arms. Okay fine, Hiruzen growled. Tell me how you can change the fact that his body is now more chakra than flesh. You have some special hidden jutsu to fix that. He hated sounding so pessimistic, but he truly doubted Jiraiya had anything to fox that. He doesn't have a human body anymore, it's gone, he is what he is now. I wasn't fully convinced at first, but I went to personally check up on him 2 weeks ago, and that's when I noticed it, Hiruzen muttered lowly, before reaching under his desk for something. You're aware of the legends behind the kitsune, yes? He questioned. I'm fairly informed on their history, why? Jiraiya responded, unsure as to where Hiruzen was going with this. The legend spoke of something each kitsune held, something that gave them their power, Hiruzen intoned. Jiraiya nodded, following along. Ah yes, their Hashi no Tama, little white crystals. It said that their life was connected to them. What's that have to do with Naruto? Jiraiya said. He was well aware of the legends pertaining to the mythical creatures, as a sage would be. The size of their crystals was related to their power, but most weren't larger than a pebble. Yes well, those pebbles could be deceiving, Hiruzen muttered. It was stated that a kitsune with a Hashi no Tama the size of a pebble could destroy a small village. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. Cute, but I could easily do the same. What's your point? Jiraiya grunted. When I visited Naruto, Hiruzen seemed to struggle for words. I saw it. What? the white-haired man asked. Embedded in his forehead, surrounded by a black patch of fur, was a Hashi no Tama shaped like a diamond, and it was the size of your skull. Jiraiya's heart nearly stopped at the statement. A horrified look crossed the Toad Sage's face, his mind reeling. Had heard of strong kitsune before and had actually seen a few in person, but never in his life could he possibly even fathom a kitsune wielding a Hashi no Tama that big. The color drained from his face, his hands clamming up. "Are you certain?" he found himself asking. His eyes were searching the Hokage for any sort of deceit, any trick, because if he were telling the truth, the situation they just found themselves in was a whole lot bigger than they were prepared to deal with. "Perhaps you just made a mistake." Yes, that must be the logical conclusion. The only other conclusion was too insane to even think of. Hirizin's face contorted, and Jiraiya could see just how hard he was trying not to break that level of calm rationality that he tried to carry on his shoulders. "Please, Jiraiya, by all means prove me wrong," Hirizin begged, staring him in the eyes. Jiraiya's hands found their way to his hair, running them through the white strands, stressed that is why I called you here, Jiraiya. Jiraiya sunk into the chair, his eyes closed. Where is he? Naruto, the man asked, a deep exhale echoed throughout the room. Currently residing with the Hyuga clan. After what happened, the Hyuga princess took it upon herself to care for him. A small smile grew on his face at the thought. A little reprieve settled into the air at that statement, and Jiraiya couldn't help but let a little grin form. I swear, that family line can't seem to stay away from Princess, Jiraiya muttered with a tense chuckle. Hirizin even managed to crack a small smile at the joke, recalling his late successor's hot-headed wife. Yes, well, I don't think Kushina was going to let Minato get away once she sunk her grubby little claws into him, the Hokage said, as if it were a serious matter, alleviating some of the tension. Silence passed on after that point, the two men quietly mulling over all the information laid out before them. There were so many risks and dangers that lay before them, and many of them had no set and ready solution ready to go. "Do you think Hess dangerous?" Jiraiya asked, his hand set firmly onto the chair under him. "Yes, without a shadow of a doubt," came Hirizin's reply. "Do you think Hess a threat to the village?" "No," the old man replied slowly. Jiraiya frowned. But what?" Jiraiya intoned. "There was a catch," he sighed. "There was always a catch." Hess displayed, rather, aggressive behavior, especially to those that attempt to bring his princess harm, Hirizin stated. When Jiraiya stayed silent, he moved to explain. 2 months ago there was another attempted abduction of the Hyuga heiress. You can imagine the reaction he had to that. Jiraiya's face paled. If not for the hasty intervention by the Hyuga guard, there wouldn't have been a body left to interrogate. So we're left with a 9-tailed kitsune that has a pool of power too large to properly fathom, and a protective streak a continent wide. Said kitsune most likely knows very little in terms of his potential strength, and could very well destroy everything around him if not careful. Jiraiya felt like slamming his head into the desk, repeatedly. "Brilliant, Orochimaru. Goddamn brilliant," he seethed sarcastically. "Your old teammate's stupid plans aside, let us focus on the here and now. 2 things that we can affect," Hirizin stated, taking a deep breath to attempt to calm his nerves. Jiraiya joined him in taking a few calming moments to gather themselves. "I think that it's in everyone's best interest that we manage to keep him calmed, lest we accidentally have a repeat of the events 13 years ago," he suggested. No one wanted another devastating assault by a rampaging Kyuubi, and perhaps you could help him in that manner, Hirizin stated. This caught Jiraiya's attention. "You want me to train him?" It wasn't a question, Jiraiya knew. Hirizin just nodded his head, confirming his beliefs. "I know that your spare time is limited, but I believe he could do wonders under your wings, and perhaps being around you might mellow out that aggression he has bottled up inside." As much as Jiraiya hated to admit it, the old geezer did make a very valid point. "I'll see what I can do," the white-haired sage said, "but before anything else, I'm going to check up on him in person. It's been a couple years since I saw him," he explained. As he stood up, Hirizin smiled, a relieved look washing over him. "That's all I ask. You've got to try a little harder, princess." It was once again midday in the Hyuga household, and as had become rather usual for the heiress and her guardian yokai, the two were found training in the Hyuga's private training grounds. Said training was an evolved form of catch, if you could call it that. Hinata was once again the mouse in the situation, and was doing her damnedest to escape from his grasp, but the kitsune's big and powerful rear legs prevented her from ever gaining a proper distance from him. His sing-song voice echoed across the training hall before he lunged forward again, his multiple furry tails reaching out. "Not fair, Naruto. And no tails." the Hyuga princess exclaimed, deftly dodging another one of his lunges with a grace that spoke of her flexibility. She was huffing lightly, but was in much better shape than when they first started those few months ago. Her training had really paid off, and it was proven true by comparing herself to many of the other Ninja Academy students. She outclassed them all easily, perhaps aside from Sasuke. That girl was something else for sure. "As you wish, I suppose." He smiled a wide happy smile, his eyes lighting up. "It's easier to hold you this way." Following his statement, he lunged again, this time reaching his claws out to grab her. her body contorted into a backflip, just narrowly escaping his greedy grasp. "Ah, so close," he intoned, setting his sights on her form once more. The design behind the type of training they had thought up was directly related to the young princess body type. Most of the Hyuga were rather thin and lean people, by nature as well, not by choice. That was the reason behind why their chosen combat style fit them so well. Quick, aggressive and precise chakra-infused jabs designed to debilitate and destroy you from the inside out. That was all well and good, but that style stopped working for Hinata when she hit 14, even at such a young age. It was made apparent that the girl would most definitely grow up to have a body just like that of the legendary Tsunade Senju. It was definitely showing too, even at her young age. Some in the clan had actually started to believe that she might not be of full-blood heritage. What other Hyuga ever had a voluptuous body in training, dark purple hair, and lavender eyes? None, absolutely none. But that didn't change their view of her. If that meant that their future ruler was going to be the most stunning drop-dead gorgeous woman in Konoha, then they certainly weren't complaining. She had also become the first female leader since the clan's origination. Let it not be said that fighting quickly with large breasts was easy, because it wasn't. If you have anything to say against that, then you'd likely incur the wrath of said Senju, because she has years of experience proving that it wasn't. I swear, you never tire. Hinata whined, dropping to the ground as Naruto jumped over her, landing heavily behind her. He whipped back around, his heavy legs creating echoes throughout the training hall as they connected with the hardwood floor. "And not too rough, Naruto. We have the team meeting tomorrow." Hinata squeaked as Naruto closed in again. Hinata was unable to dodge this time and found herself caught in the fox's comfortable grasp. Naruto rolled over onto his back, holding Hinata by the hips up in the air like a toy. "Thought you?" The fox laughed. Hinata couldn't help but break up into joyous giggles. "And now your punishment for such a heinous failure," he sung menacingly. Nine tails suddenly raised into the air. Her giggling stopped and she started squirming to escape. Wait. Naruto, don't you dare." Hinata warned, trying to put on her most serious face. However, that fell away rather quickly when she was assaulted on all sides by large furry tails. And Naruto. "Why you know MT ticklish there?" Hinata squealed with a burst of uncontrollable giggles. Her legs closed tightly, as if that would save her from her fate. He just smiled and laughed, assaulting all her weak spots over and over. Their laughter filled the hall, before finally they calmed down a few minutes later. Hinata sat down of his large belly, holding her legs closed as she tried to catch her breath. Naruto just smiled up at her lovingly, the large white gem on his forehead glinting in the flickering light from the lamp posts. The princess' cheeks flared a hot red, and she waved a small fan at herself to cool down. "I like that color," Naruto spoke up suddenly, a deep smile crossing his maw. Hinata blushed darker. What color?" she couldn't help but ask, though the darkening of her cheek suggested that she already knew the answer. "Red," he spoke truthfully, his eyes gazing over her soft face. "It's beautiful." In fact, the girl felt like fainting under the heavy adoration she saw in his eyes that never lied to her and gave her everything that she wanted. "The same color as your lips, okay?" Now he was just complimenting her for the sake of complimenting her. "And your eyes, I love those too." The sincerity in his voice never ceased to touch her heart. She blushed scarlet, looking away. "Why you're such a shameless flirt," the girl muttered, but she smiled back at him. The loving smile that his face lit up into made her feel complete. "I only tell you the truth," he responded cheekily, and she did. In fact, she craved his adoring attention badly. She pretended that she didn't, but he saw straight through that ruse easily, and he enjoyed feeding that craving, very much so. He made her feel like an absolute queen every day, and she won't have it any other way. "Yes please, tell me more," she muttered softly, reaching out to grasp his ears. He grinned, happily complying to her wishes. "I love your voice," he continued lowly. His nose was now close to hers, almost touching. "I love your smell, I suppose," he said quieter. His nose pressed into the small crevice below her chest, like cinnamon buns on a cold winter morning. He breathed, his eyes pulled up to meet her. Her entire face had turned red as she squeaked, and he hid his grin under her chest. "I love the days where I can sit and watch you train." The girl found herself lost for words, instead sitting comfortably atop him as he buttered her up. They were intending to stay like that for a little while longer, but the moment was interrupted by a knock on the hall's double doors. The other clan members knew when to leave them to their privacy, so whoever was there must have needed something important. With a deep sigh, knowing that his fun was likely over for the day, Naruto called out, "Come in." In fact, following his exclamation, the doors swung open, revealing one of the Hyuga guards and someone else. Naruto's eyes lit up in recognition. "Jiraiya." The fox exclaimed in shocked joy, quickly getting to his feet. Hinata stood up beside him, her blush fading away as the newcomer entered the hall. She didn't know a Jiraiya, but Naruto seemed to, so that was enough for her. Naruto ran forward, jumping into the air as if to tackle the sage ninja. Jiraiya sputtered, stumbling backwards to avoid being crushed, only for the fox to suddenly shrink midair, landing lightly in the man's arms. The ninja's eyes twitched as he stared in stunned silence down at the grinning mini Kyuubi. "Hey, kid," Jiraiya said, trying to convey his usual enthusiasm he was known for carrying. Naruto either didn't seem to notice the change in tone or didn't care, he was just happy to see his godfather once again. "How ya been holding up?" he asked casually. Inside, however, his brain was doing flips. This was the first time he was actually seeing Naruto as he was now, a big overprotective kitsune, not at all the normal human he used to be. It was almost too much for him to handle without freaking out on the outside. It was also crazy to see his ability to transform so rapidly in person. "I am happy here, I suppose." The genuine joy he expressed was surprising to the Toad Sage. It wasn't at all the reaction he was expecting. Just goes to show just how out of the loop he was. "But forget about me, I haven't seen you in a couple of years." "Who is this, Naruto-kun?" Hinata spoke up from beside him. Naruto just turned to grin at her. "This is my godfather, Jiraiya," Naruto informed happily. He was so happy, for the first time in a long time, there was someone else that he knew and loved here, with him again. "Ah, and you must be Hinata Hyuga," Jiraiya said with a grin, bending down to one knee. "Pleased to meet you, I hear that you're quite the little lady." She narrowed her eyes at the statement, a blush adorning her cheeks once again. "Princess isn't small, in fact," Naruto defended. "Thank you, darling," Hinata responded, flashing him a loving smile. Jiraiya's eyes unfocused for a moment, his mind instantly locking onto two separate words. Now perhaps it was just in his nature to detect these sorts of things, but he couldn't help it even if he tried. "Princess. Darling. Oh god, they've got pet names for each other." The sage internally ranted. "Yes, my bad," came his rather thought-out response. "I don't mean to cut our little reunion short, but I actually came here to check up on you, Sarutobi's orders." Jiraiya sighed, standing back up. He took a moment to fully take Naruto's new form into consideration. "Ah, I see." Naruto was upset, but he wasn't angry. He understood where this might be coming from. "And if you are willing, I could help to train you to control your newfound power." The fox's eyes widened at this. Jiraiya saw his reaction and grinned. "Hook, line and sinker. But I'm a very busy man, as you know, running an entire spy network isn't exactly easy," he said, trying to come off as cool. Naruto frowned thoughtfully, but, instead of speaking up for himself, he turned to the spunky little Hyuga beside him. Hinata looked between the two, unsure if she should just go along with it or stay away. She'd been tricked many times before, and Naruto more so, but for him to trust this man the way he did, who was she to say no? If you think it's a good idea, then it'll be okay with it." She seemed unsure, which almost put Naruto off, but she said that she was good, so Naruto let it go. "Thank you," his response was soft, giving her a knowing look. Jiraiya frowned at the display. He was told that there was something between the two of them, but he didn't expect this. He only caught the butt end of whatever was going on before he barged in, but it seemed to him that Naruto held the Hyuga so high on his personal list that he'd probably do literally anything she asked. Now only if he knew that it wasn't a probably, but a definitely. "That's great. Well, I'm only in town for today, so we'll have to train some other time," he said with a sigh. "But in the meantime, maybe you could catch me up to speed on yourself." "I've been away for a little while," Jiraiya asked, and Naruto's mood seemed to falter. Deciding to get comfortable again, Naruto curled up on the ground, motioning for Hinata to join him. Hinata practically shoved herself into the crook of his neck, resting her back against his furry chest. It was one of her favorite positions. "He doesn't like to talk about it." Hinata spoke up in the fox's place, running a soothing hand under his chin. "But if you don't mind, I am perfectly capable of offering an explanation." Jiraiya's face softened. It seems like he'd have to settle for that. He could clearly see just how uncomfortable the situation was for him to talk about openly. He wouldn't press it any further. Jiraiya left that afternoon with a much clearer view of the situation, and more importantly, how to handle it. He had all these makeshift plans set up just in case, but it turned out more positive than he first thought possible. He'd report his findings to Hiruzen, and then see what else he could do for the kitsune. It was the most he could do, and Naruto deserved the help, now more than ever. His second objective was to track down the bastard that dared to experiment on his godson and beat the life out of him. Orochimaru had gone too far this time, and his schemes would have lasting effects this time around. He didn't think it was possible for anyone to turn Naruto back to normal, and sadly, Naruto was the first to reach that conclusion, even when others thought it possible. But perhaps it wouldn't be the worst thing, since he was capable in some form of shapeshifting. He had come to terms with the fact that he was stuck like this for the rest of his life, and had apparently decided to get comfortable with it. Jiraiya couldn't say that he'd so easily do the same if the roles were reversed. Of course, it most likely wouldn't have been possible, if not for the little Hyuga. That girl seemed to be the only thing keeping Naruto sane. insane, and she was doing a terrific job too. He shuddered at the thought of what might happen were he to lose her. The image of the world burning came to the forefront of his mind. It was quiet, she hated the silence. The wind had died down hours ago and had since yet to return. Oh, how much she wished that it returned to wash away the ever-present silence that pervaded throughout the walls that surrounded her. It was days like this that she found herself just sitting there, quietly, staring at symbols that reminded her of what she didn't have. It was the reason why she hated the silence, because she knew who caused the silence, and she hated him too. Who was he to take them away from her? Who was he to destroy her very reason for existence, her very life? Brought to mere shadows of its former self, all because he wanted to be stronger. Preposterous, perhaps she never knew who he was. It was all a lie in the end. The past 14 years made no sense and were made to become nothing more than memories of something wrong. She couldn't get away from it, she wasn't allowed to. He made that much a promise. Everywhere she went she was reminded of their demise. Even when alone, she could not escape the whispers of those lost to the night. It wasn't her fault. She was only a child. She had no power, and because she had no power, she couldn't stop him from accomplishing what he did. She was weak, she hated being weak, strongest in her entire academy, attained the title of Rookie of the Year, but that meant nothing in the end, because he made Rookie of the Year as well. She was only following in his footsteps, just like her father had expected, and she hated that. She loathed the feeling that was only a shadow of something stronger, forced into submission by association of the name. Days passed differently than they used to when she was a child, because now she was alone in the world. She was taken from her family and left as the sister of a mass murderer. Yes, things were different now. It was hard, so very hard, when she went home and no one was there to welcome her back, besides the man that she would not name. Her caretaker was the only other one left. She was grateful that she wasn't completely alone, but it still wasn't the same. She needed someone else in her life, or she was going to go insane and kill everyone. Perhaps that's why he did it, because he was alone. If that was the case, then she wasn't allowed to be alone, lest she follow after his footsteps. For the first time in hours, she tore her gaze away from the cracked clan symbol on the wall, her black eyes finding solace in the darkening skies. Her dainty pale white fingers brushed up against the strands of her Ashen hair as she fiddled with a ninja headband tied around her neck. Again she found herself lost in thought. Why did she have that headband? What did she do to deserve it? She knew others that had struggled for years to earn that accomplishment, but she was given it because of her title. What did heiress to a dead clan even mean? Congratulations, you weren't killed like the rest. How lucky. She was good, she knew that she was good, she had confidence in her own skills, but she knew that she wasn't the strongest there was. She was fully aware that there was those out there that could destroy her existence in an instant. That was why she trained to become stronger, strong enough to eventually kill him. There was someone else, someone other than her that had suffered heavily in life too. That person also deserved that headband. She knew that he had trained for years to become strong enough for them, but they wouldn't have it. He was treated wrongly and resented for things that he had not done. She had watched him sometimes, interested that someone else that suffered heavily could continue moving forward as if it didn't affect them, but then he too disappeared. Had he taken him from her too? How? How did he continue living under all that stress? She needed to know. She didn't want to become like her brother. She didn't want to go insane, she didn't. Sometimes people looked at her as if she was only a wrong comment away from snapping, but she wasn't. She swore that she was normal, that she wasn't crazy, but she could see it in the eyes of the older ninja. They saw her as just another of the crazy ones. After all the Uchiha before her had problems, so why wouldn't she? It was only a matter of time before she went crazy and killed everyone. No, she whispered, shoving those rebellious thoughts as far away as she could. She promised that she wouldn't go crazy. She promised that she wouldn't lose herself to the insanity seated deep in her blood. She wouldn't allow it. Itachi lost it because he was alone. Right. Then she just wouldn't be alone anymore. She needed someone else to talk to, someone else to hold her, someone else to tell her that she wasn't crazy. I'm not crazy, she whispered, deadly silent tears falling from her eyes. Why? Why did he have to disappear too? How was she supposed to stay strong when her source of strength suddenly vanished off the face of the earth? Damn you, why did you leave me? A soft hiccup escaped her lips, a desperate cry for help. She turned back to the now darkened skies. Naruto, where did you go? A restrained sob broke free from her heart, one she tried to hold back. She wasn't sure how much longer she could hold it together without him, and he didn't even know her. If only she could see him once more. I am not crazy, am not crazy, am not. Red light filled the darkness, then a mad giggle. I am. It was the dead of night in the Hyuga compound. Everyone was asleep or elsewhere. The only ones currently awake were those among the guard, standing at their post loyally until someone came to relieve them. However, in the depths of the Harris chamber, her nine-tailed fox roused from his sleep. Deep red eyes glowed in the pitch darkness of night. Blinking slowly as they looked about, almost lost, Naruto quietly raised from the ground, careful as to not awaken the sleeping princess only mere feet from him. He had thought he heard her crying in her sleep, and he snapped awake. Without making a sound, he shuffled to her side, looking her over in her sleep. The girl lay there quietly, her face scrunched up as she shivered in her sleep. The soft huff from his nose brushed up against her cheeks, before he reached down and pulled her blanket back up to cover her. Patiently he waited, until finally she stopped shivering, and a small smile graced her face. His eyes softened at her, before he moved back to his bed, he curled back up, wrapping himself with his tails before closing his eyes as he drifted back off to sleep. 10 minutes later his eyes silently snapped back open at the sound of crying. He got up quickly, careful as to not stumble in the darkness. He was at Hinata's bedside once again, looking her over for any sign of a problem. He spent probably the better half of 10 minutes looking her over, just to make sure that she was actually okay. When he failed to find anything out of the ordinary, he let out a huff and went back to his bed. However, before he could sit back down, the sound of crying caught his attention. He quickly looked around the room to find the source, but it wasn't from Hinata. In fact, the sound wasn't even coming from the same room. He moved for the doors, using his tails to softly pry them open. His padded feet made nary a sound as they connected with the floor. Had long ago learned how to move silently, despite his rather massive size. It made sneaking about much easier, especially when he didn't want to wake his sleeping princess. He poked his head out into the hall, the dark unlit walkways extending in two directions. The sound of quiet distant sobbing caught his attention, and he slowly followed after it. He made his way into young Hanabi's room, afraid that something had happened to her again. He poked his head into her room, quickly scanning for any intruders that might be, but he was met with silence. But the only sound being Hanabi's soft breathing. Furthermore, he didn't smell any other scents in the room that weren't familiar. Satisfied that all was well with the little girl too, he moved back into the hallway. He stood there quietly, silently listening for something, anything, but it was silent. With a quiet sigh, he slowly made back for Hinata's room. He went to open the door, but stopped. He heard it again, the crying. His head snapped back to the empty hallway, but nothing met his eyes. His red orbs dipped low, a huff escaping from his maw. The sound sent a chill down his spine, for reasons he could not comprehend. Dwelling on it was going nowhere, and it was late. He was too tired to think right then. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day for Hinata and subsequently himself as well, and his lack of sleep as of late was showing. With not a word, he took his place on his bed and fell asleep. Roughly 2 months later, the team meetings were called. Usually, meetings of such relevance were to be held as soon as possible after the class graduation, but for some reason that was not explained to the newly minted ninja, the whole thing was delayed. Well upset at the news, Hinata had used a precious time to further train herself alongside Naruto. She had passed the initial test and such, however, it was merely the beginning of her journey. She wanted to be ready, she needed to be. One day, Naruto might not be there to protect her, and if she wasn't strong enough to save herself, then who would? That kind of question was something that constantly hung over Naruto's thoughts. He was her weapon, yes, but she needed to be strong enough without him too. So for the time between meetings, she trained. Her speed and agility had definitely increased, even though she felt as if nothing had changed. Reaction time and effective dodging skills were her strong suit, when her training consisted of trying to not get bitch slapped to hell by one of Naruto's tails, and under the tutelage of her fellow Hyuga clan members. She had made good progress on the clan's trademark fighting style, so when the time finally came, she was ready. The meeting had been scheduled for an early morning, the sun having only risen an hour ago. While some of the new ninja were expressing their complaints about the sudden and early class meeting, Hinata was quietly waiting in her seat. Patience was one of her strongest attributes, and that most definitely showed. When their old class sensei finally entered the room, the noise eventually died down. Haruka, a man well known by the younger ninja generation, and a good sensei overall, had been emotionally down lately, yet no one seemed to know the reason why. When he set his gaze over the class, he gained the young ninja attention. His gaze passed over the Hyuga heiress. Noting the little fox that had wrapped itself around her neck like something akin to an expensive scarf, he knew without a doubt that it wasn't cosmetic, but yet an actual creature. Around the creature's neck was a Konoha Genin's headband, signifying its relevance. However, Haruka couldn't remember the girl owning a fox small enough to do what it was doing. Pushing aside the very peculiar sight, he cleared his throat. His speech was well planned out, and Hinata got the distinction that he was proud of it. He had all rights to be, but it was kind of silly all things considered. The girl started giggling quietly at the man's antics, but her mouth was hidden by the fox she wore, so he couldn't really tell if it was her or not. By the end of it, many points had been made, although, that being said, the tiny little fox curled around Hinata's neck only cared to remember what he deemed the relevant information. The class was going to be separated into multiple 3-man teams, each led by a Jonin class ninja. From then on, each team would pretty much go their separate ways. He paid careful attention to the team configurations, at least those he cared to. to. He had a large class, but only a few people actually mattered in the end. Shikamaru, Kiba and Princess were all separated, a fact that greatly upset him. He would have preferred she be paired with people he knew and trusted, compared to just about everyone else in the entire class. This did not, in fact, go his way. And finally, Team 10, Hinata Hyuga, Sakura Haruno, and Ino Yamanaka, your Jonin sensei will be Kurina Yui. Haruka's announcement came to an end, and many of the students couldn't help but feel either upset or complacent with the results. Faster than he thought, the newly minted teams were one by one called from the room by their sensei. Eventually, only Team 10 remained, patiently awaiting their sensei's arrival. At some point, Haruka had to leave, stating that he had other meetings to attend to. The silence that followed his absence was deafening, to say the least. Hinata poked glances at her new teammates, trying to get a read on them, while, yes, she had indeed attended the same class as them for the past couple years plus, she had rarely interacted with them, plus, at least in the pink-haired girl, Sakura's case. Trying to talk to a princess of an entire clan was a difficult thing to bring oneself to do. Hinata could at the very least respect that she didn't think highly of herself compared to her. She could not mentally handle someone with inferiority and a god complex on the same team as her. At the very least, Naruto would most certainly not have that. Glancing away from the nervously blushing pink-haired girl, Hinata turned her attention to the blonde-haired girl, Ino. Ino was a fellow heiress, but compared to her, the Yamanaka clan was very small. Hinata was actually royalty, a sobering thought for the other two girls to swallow. Ino had been staring at the scarf around her neck for the last 3 minutes curiously, seemingly unable to tear her eyes away from it. Hinata could tell that she wanted to speak, but seemingly held her tongue. Hinata hummed, the sound not unusual for a princess of her nature. She glanced out the large pane windows that lined her class walls. She could tell that her teammates were getting restless, and over an hour had already passed since the first team left. Kurama-kun, do you mind fetching our sensei? It appears that she is late. Such an outcome is very unbecoming of a Jonin sensei. Would you agree? Hinata hummed, seemingly to no one in particular. Both Ino and Sakura turned to her as if she were insane, but before they could comment on it, something responded to her. Yes, princess, the deep gravelly voice hummed in reply. Following that, the scarf around Hinata's neck came undone, revealing that it was actually a very peculiar-looking red fox. Kurama could almost hear the other two girls' brains stop functioning at the sight. The small fox was a peculiar sight, what with a large white diamond-like item embedded in its forehead, and the fact that it was talking. Following his response, Kurama hopped down from Hinata's neck, landing heavily on the ground below. The ground actually shook underneath the tiny creature's apparent immense weight, practically making the two girls' brains catch fire at the absurdity. It sounded as if the little thing weighed over 500 pounds. But then how in the name of Kami was the girl that it had wrapped itself around acting so casual about it? Hinata had to force back an entertained smirk at the stupefied looks the girls were giving her. Exposing them both to Kurama had been just as amusing as she had thought it'd be. Even Kurama found it funny, if the almost cat-like flicking of his tails was anything to go by. Casually, the little fox waltzed out of the practically empty classroom, disappearing into the empty halls. Silence reigned for approximately 4 seconds before someone spoke up. What? Came Ino's brilliant response, her face twitching in confusion. Sakura was stuck looking back and forth between Ino, Hinata, and the doorway the fox left through. She looked as if she wanted to say something, but cold. Hinata hummed, a coy look on her face. Oh, my apologies, that was Kurama-kun, my guardian spirit, she explained, a smile adorning her face. Sakura's expression exclaimed that a response clearly clarified nothing. Ino, however, you princesses get all the magical stuff. Ino remarked with a huff, crossing her arms. A quick glance to the side showed that Sakura was silently imitating the blonde-haired girl. Hinata couldn't help but wonder why. Huffing indignantly, Ino threw her hair over her shoulder, a motion Sakura once again copied. Hinata smiled a small gentle smile. I suppose that you are right, she responded softly, turning her attention back to the doorway. My Kurama-kun is magical, she whispered lowly, the others not picking it up. Her cheeks heated up lightly at the thought of him, a joyful little smile adorning her face. A few moments passed in a strangely comfortable silence before the sound of Kurama dragging their new sensei into the room by the back of her shirt was heard. Sakura and Ino's expressions fell as their new sensei was forcibly dragged across the floor by the surprisingly powerful little fox, all the while struggling and failing to escape his hold. Both girls shot the Hyuga heiress a concerned look at the display of her little guardian spirit strength. The fact that she had this creature on their side was a damn blessing in and of itself. She was hiding in the classroom next over, princess, she refused to come with me, so I stopped giving her an option. In fact, Kurama spoke up, answering the question no one had yet asked. Hinata's face lit up at his explanation. Thank you, you really do have a way with words, you know, Hinata said as a matter of fact like, the little fox, for his part blushed under the praise and turned away. The older woman gave him a withering glare, which in actuality looked more like a pout before she stood up and brushed off her clothes. Gee gosh, no need to be so pushy, she grumbled, before putting in the best professional look she could manage, which still came off as meek-like. Kurama found it hard to take her seriously, but he wasn't going to knock her for trying. It probably helped that he found her kinda adorable, and the fact that she didn't seem to hold some kind of arbitrary hatred towards him. Already good points in his book, but he was yet to be impressed. Well, no putting it off now, she spoke quietly, not that she was really trying to. She cleared her throat, thrusting her chest out and placing her hands behind her back. My name is Kei Kurina Yuhi, and I'm going to be your new Jonin sensei. After a moment of silence, she brought a hand up to her face and thought, I think I said that right, she muttered softly before focusing back on her students. The woman was dressed in a very strange-looking outfit, to put it lightly. Nowhere to be seen was the standard Jonin vest, but instead she was covered in a strange white cloth that literally wrapped around her body to preserve her modesty. It covered from the pelvis up, reaching all the way up to her shoulders. Most of her legs were exposed, save for a pair of undershorts styled like her wrappings that covered from her crotch down about 5 inches, barely covering from her butt down a couple inches, and only on the right leg. A single red sleeve adorned her right arm, with the left fully exposed. Both of her forearms were wrapped in a similar yet tighter wrapping, serving as arm warmers in a sense. Ankle-high black ninja sandals adorned her feet, her toenails painted a vibrant red. Surprisingly, she wore her ninja headband around her head, probably the only normal-looking thing about her honestly. She had very long flowing black hair, which contrasted nicely with her bright red eyes. A unique color for sure. All in all, she was an extremely striking woman, very pretty too, which is why her seemingly meek-like and airhead attitude threw the 3 aspiring ninja for a loop. Hinata's eye twitched at the women's unprofessional display, but didn't comment. All Jonin were allowed their quirks, seeing as to rise to the rank of Jonin meant that you were certainly powerful in your own right. You were allowed mentalities that seemed strange to others, that and, most if not all that reached that rank, had most certainly gone through their fair share of traumatic events, and the strange and uncanny personalities were many a time their coping mechanisms at work. While Hinata pondered that over, Kurama just sat there, staring at her exposed eyes. Kurenai apparently caught him looking, and locked eyes with him nervously. There was no perverse gaze to his eyes however, but only a look of acute judgment. He responded with a confused tilt of his head, before casually strolling back up to Hinata's side. He didn't comment on it, but his thoughts were occupied with the reasons behind her dress. Had never seen anyone like her before today. What an intriguing woman she was. Had only hoped that she'd be a good and strong teacher for his princess. Had have no less. Shaking off the strange vibe that had settled in the air, she suddenly clapped her hands, grabbing their attention once more. Well then, how about some introductions? She questioned with a smile. What do you think of my sensei, Naruto-kun? After the rather late meeting between their newly assigned teammates and their sensei, the whole group disbanded and went their own ways. They had promised to meet up the next day for their official first mission assignment as a team and had the rest of the day off. Ino and Sakura wanted to spend it with each other and offered to invite Hinata along with them. New team bonding and all that. Well, that was great and all. Hinata had other priorities to attend to first. After arriving back to the safety and privacy of the compound, Kurama suddenly changed back into his normal large 9-tailed form with a quick flash from his Hashi no Tama as the only sign. He wasted no time and began to cuddle the Hyuga princess into submission, with no protests from the girl, with nothing immediately demanding the two's attention for the rest of the evening. Naruto had decided that he wanted to cuddle, and Hinata couldn't say no, so now, in the later evening found the large fluffy Naruto laying on his back, with a slightly undressed Hinata relaxingly sprawled across his belly. Naruto was contemplating just staying that way for the rest of the night, the cool afternoon air flowing in from the nearby window. But Hinata suddenly spoke up, asking a question that she knew had been dwelling on. The fox lazily lifted his head, looking down to the girl on his puffy mid-region. She lay laying on her stomach, resting her head in her palms as she gazed up at him. He felt himself get lost in her eyes for a moment before her question clicked. He exhaled hot air and thought, the heat brushing Hinata's hair to the sides. He hummed lowly, "Shess, different." His deep crimson eyes squinted and thought, there's something odd about her, and I'm not talking about her outfit, I suppose. He struggled for words, trying his best to describe what he saw. He glanced back down to her, her head tilted to the side cutely. He was getting distracted again. Whatever, she will suffice, he muttered offhandedly. What about Sakura and Ino? I was surprised to find out that I was placed on an all-girl team, Hinata hummed, drawing circles on his chest. I find it strange. Well, I find it acceptable, he quipped cheekily, giving her a grin. She just looked up to him with a pout. You're only saying that because there's no boys on my team, she said with an exasperated sigh. Of course, he had no hesitation say that, she pouted. Oh boo, you're such a mood killer, she huffed lightly, lacking any actual heat. You're my mood, he quipped back equally as fast. She felt her face flushing. Damn this fox and his silver tongue. He always knew just what to say to cheer her up. He felt content to merely lay there for the rest of the evening, and she did too, but one question burst its way to the forefront of her mind. How has the daily training sessions with Jiraiya-sama been going? Has your control improved? She hummed. After Jiraiya had been called back to Konoha via a distressed Hiruzen, he had taken to training Naruto every chance he got. It only amounted to an hour or so a day, but he was definitely making headway. Jiraiya determined rather quickly that Naruto was in no need of new abilities or combat training, because if he was anything like what he came from, then power certainly was not in question. But control over that power indeed was. Naruto had actually expressed to the white-haired ninja that he was concerned that the fickle control he had might slip one of these days and had end up hurting Hinata, or worse. When asked by Jiraiya to explain, Naruto tried firing off a quote-unquote weak fire jutsu. Let it be said that it was only because of the fact that they chose ahead of time to move to an open area to train. That the surrounding forest didn't catch fire, that power was surely great and in battle would be a great asset. However, Naruto had no control over the power output. He could burn his foes to ashes with terrifying ease, but his allies would definitely be among those killed were he to commit. That was something he decided that he couldn't allow whatsoever, so Jiraiya trained him not to learn new powerful attacks or useful ninjutsu, but instead he taught him to finally hone his unbridled energy. To put that in perspective, the first day of training, Naruto sneezed and lit an entire tree on fire by accident. That brought up another problem. It became very apparent to Jiraiya that the form Naruto currently took was practically broadcasting his chakra signature to the entire country. Simply put, his current form existed because of him not actively trying to rein in his power. That also explained why people felt so skittish around him, even after proving to them that he wouldn't bring them harm, because he was constantly emitting the same raging red chakra that reminded them of the night of the attack years ago. When he asked him to gently try and rein in his chakra, the white diamond embedded in his forehead began to glow a hot white. From there, small streaks of his fur began to turn from the harsh blood red to a pure white in color, all connected to the Hashi no Tama. His eyes softened slightly, and the red began to turn blue. There was a significant difference in the raw power he was outputting. And Jiraiya found his shoulders relaxing slightly. Of course, one look at the fox's face showed just how hard it was for him to simply do that. He was focusing so unbelievably hard to rein it in that he nearly passed out from the strain it brought. Nothing significant was going to happen one day in, but they had a lot of time. The second Naruto lost control, the white fur instantly faded back to its aggressive red color, his eyes reverted to their sharp red, and the thunderous aura came back with it. While the test was a failure, it did offer insight into what him controlling his power would be like. Jiraiya definitely liked what he saw. A few days into training and Jiraiya had made a surprising discovery, one that Naruto was already pretty aware of. It had become apparent that while yes, Naruto's body was physical, it was also at the same time not. Put simply, his Hashi no Tama was the source of his power, and it output chakra aggressively, which in turn formed his nine-tailed fox body. He theorized that if Naruto learned to alter how his chakra was managed, then he could in theory change his form. It was all speculation at first, but after weeks of training, it became a reality. 4 weeks into training, and Naruto had mastered just enough control over his power that he was able to change his entire form. However, the most he had managed was the rather inconspicuous-looking little fox form he used earlier at the academy. He had tried to change himself into the form of a human, but he barely managed to get the rough form down before he lost control and reverted to what Jiraiya had come to dub his default form. He tried to get a human form down for the next entire month, but he made little to no headway. Every failure angered him, and anger completely botched his control over his power, and everything just spiraled downwards from there. He hadn't given up on that goal, however, he knew that it was going to be a long while before he accomplished it. For the time being, he would spend his days working on perfecting what Jiraiya also dubbed his pure fox form, the form where his fur turned white and his body became less aggressive, the raw and angry chakra he constantly released turning a cool and soothing blue. From the short amount of time he had been able to keep that form in place, his anger would fade, his murderous aura would become soothed, and his power wouldn't be just thrown about so haphazardly. Jiraiya also noted that he felt unbelievably more comfortable around him while in that state, and stated that if he were to master that form, then the likelihood of him being in public might be seen a bit differently than before. His pure form just seemed to put those around him at unbelievable ease and radiated peace. The only problem being is that in the 2 months of training he had gone through, he could only hold the perfect pure form for about 5 minutes, after which his control would snap and head revert to his default state, which always led to him becoming angry, and you could see how that played out. He could hold a partial state for longer, but it only had barely half the effects of his pure form. But he would get this down, damn it. Had promised himself that had become better for Hinata, and this was how it was going to happen. He just wished that it wasn't so hard. Naruto-kun. Naruto's eyes snapped back to her at the sound of his name being uttered. He had apparently spaced out again, and she had been patiently awaiting his answer. "Oh, I'm sorry princess, I spaced out there," the fox grunted. "Training with Jiraiya has been interesting. I feel as though I'm not making as much progress as I should be. The most that I can do is hold that small little fox form." He turned his head away from her. "I feel like I'm failing you," he grumbled. "Oh Naruto-kun," Hinata sighed softly. Before he could pull away, she took hold of his cheeks, pulling him to face her. "You've never failed me, not before, and not now, so please don't beat yourself up over it, for my sake." He found his anger at his own failures fade as she spoke. As he melted into her touch, her face lit up in glee as he relaxed under her very touch, almost purring under her hands. "Okay princess." From there they basked in each other's presence until the end of the night, falling asleep in an embrace. This was most likely going to be their last calm night for a while to come, because tomorrow they truly began their lives in Ninja of Konoha. What came after tonight was unforeseen, because anything in a world ruled by ninja was unexpected and came at you fast. Darling, I think that our sensei is late again." It was early morning in the village hidden in the leaves, the sun only just beginning to shine its warming rays over the horizon and onto the land below. As the Kitsune and Hyuga princess duo would have it, they found themselves awake and back at their ninja academy, awaiting the arrival of Kurenai, as well as the other two girls. They had promised to meet up at the break of dawn, but it seemed as if their team did not fully comprehend just what the break of dawn meant. Naruto had once again donned his guardian spirit form, his much smaller form. This was, so far, the easiest form he could manage and do so for the longest amount of time. He was working on something else, but he wasn't confident in managing it correctly yet. The little fox was resting in Hinata's lap, the both of them waiting atop the Ninja Academy's roof. She had taken to petting Naruto's back to pass the time, something the little fox deeply enjoyed. Roughly another half hour passed before the rest of the team finally appeared. The door to the roof swung open, revealing both Ino and Sakura, who had taken the stairs to the top. Unlike Naruto and Hinata, who saw fit to scale the building, being a ninja had its perks, and one of them was definitely the ability to climb practically anything, even walking upside down. It seemed apparent that these two did not have that knowledge, however. Following the arrival of the other two girls, there was a flash of leaves that appeared suddenly, only to fade away and reveal Kurenai. "I apologize for being late, I was occupied with." Kurenai slowly trailed off when she realized that she didn't actually have a valid excuse. Hadakun makes it seem so easy," she muttered, lost in thought. She coughed weakly to try and gain any sort of ground in the conversation, and because Hinata's little fox's gaze was unnerving her. "Alright then, introductions were covered yesterday. Today we will cover." She raised a hand to her chin and thought again, her expression blank. The woman went silent again when it became apparent that she really didn't know what she was doing, and if the things she wasn't doing was being done correctly. "Oh, I definitely should had Hadakun give me some notes," she ranted in her head. Seeing as she seemed to be lost, the best friends pair of pink and blonde threw a glance at each other, hoping that maybe the other would have some sort of info. They would both be disappointed, however, as it would seem, Kurama would be the first to voice his complaints. "Are all Jonin senseis like this?" Ino whispered to Sakura, who signed back with a no idea. "Yuhi-sensei, listen," the little fox spoke slowly, with such a deep commanding voice that continued to catch them off guard, especially when that voice came from such a small body. "Are you trying to waste my prince's time? For your sake, that better not be the truth." The eyebrow-twitching annoyance that carried into his tone was made very apparent, what with the way his tails were angrily flicking back and forth. It was also possibly the longest sentence the group had ever heard him speak in one sitting. Kurenai looked taken aback by the little creature's apparent lack of respect and his arrogance, but her expression barely shifted from the lack of emotion to lightly shocked. "Oh of course I'm not." Her rebuttal lost all of its energy almost the moment she started speaking. "Hokage-sama entrusted me with this team, do you doubt him?" she retorted, staring him down. The little fox's face didn't even twitch, signaling that yes he does doubt him. Her face fell, her shoulders dropping. She stopped suddenly, before vanishing in a swirl of leaves. The group of ninja in training glanced at each other, lost as to what happened. Kurama-kun, what just happened?" Hinata asked, glancing down to the little fox in her lap in confusion. The other girls turned to face him as well, hoping that he potentially knew of their sensei's location. The fox was silent for a moment before glancing off to the right, seemingly staring at nothing. Then he cracked a victorious grin. "She gave up, I suppose," he stated, as if that in of itself perfectly explained everything, and, lo and behold, it would in just a moment, and then, as if she never left, she reappeared in a swirl of leaves. However, this time, what the who the hell were standing beside Kurenai and wearing nothing but a mask and a pair of black pants and a book in hand, was the built silver-haired legend of Konoha himself, Kakashi, and as it would seem, his choice in the matter of joining their little team meeting didn't matter, especially not to the red-eyed Yuhi, Kurenai. "The fuck," Kakashi exclaimed. "I need your help, Hadakun," the woman stated flatly. "I was about to take a shower," he retorted hotly. "Can you help train them?" She ignored him. "You're ignoring me, and then afterwards we can get dinner," and again. "I already had PL," he was cut off once more. "And then I can help train your genin." "But I," and again. "And then we can go back to my place, and you can show me that new style you were practicing in the bedroom." Okay. He jumped in, slapping a hand over her mouth. "It'll help train your ninja." She stared at his hand, wide-eyed, but expression still blank. Was it really that simple to convince her boyfriend to do something? Perhaps she should start talking about their private life more often, because that was the only thing that seemed to get the lazy Jonin moving. "Oh good," she said quietly, although he could hear her relief. Kakashi sighed lowly, before stashing his book and clapping his hands. "Well alright. Let's get down to business, so you three are her new team, huh?" The silver-haired man asked, wide smile behind his mask. The response he got was mixed. "You could grind steel on those abs," Sakura signed to Ino in stunned disbelief, getting a nod of agreement from the blonde-haired heiress. "I could stare at them all day and not get bored," Ino sighed, her eyes drifting. There was a healthy red hue on both girls' cheeks. Kakashi felt like smashing his head into a wall, but managed to keep his cool. Hinata threw a subtle glance at her teammates before addressing the man. "So, it would seem, Haddock-sensei," the lavender-haired princess retorted, managing to keep a straight face. However, her disappointment was only amplified by the fox in her lap. Woe's face screamed murder. The little creature was only kept calm by the lovely princess' soft hands that refused to stop petting him. She was used to the flames he'd emit when angry and calmly ignored the fire that seemed to leak from his lips. The rest of the team meeting continued in a similar fashion, but Naruto forced himself to tune everything out, lest he lose his patience and explode. His fur was bristling the entire time, his eyes closed and a sneer marring his maw. The Hokage better have some explaining to do, because if he entrusted the safety of his princess to a bunch of buffoons, he wasn't going to let it slide. Hinata could feel the killing intent the little fox was emitting, and she partially understood why he was upset. That didn't mean that she didn't find the reason behind it incredibly cute. "Hey Hana. You're going to be late for that mission." It was around mid-morning in the Inuzuka clan matriarch's household, and as the animalistic people would have it, sleeping in was practically in their blood. Kiba, the only male descendant from the current clan head, had been up early taking care of the ninjas. Ninken had known that his sister had a mission early in the day, and he knew that she'd likely sleep in anyway. Good thing she had a great little brother like him to help her out. "Oh Hana. Wake the hell up." He howled through her bedroom door, grin on his face. He knew he was being pesky, but didn't care anyway. There was a resounding thud from behind the door. He backed off just before it came flying open. "Damn it brat. I'm sleeping." Hana hissed, glaring daggers at the cheeky grin Kiba threw at her. The boy threw his arms up behind his head, smiling widely. "Yeah, I know, but you're awake now, see?" He responded. She gave him a deadpan stare before disappearing back into her room. With nothing else to do, he wandered off. He was off today, his sensei having been called away for something important that of course left him and his team by themselves. He huffed with a frown. He was already bored. "Huh, I wonder what Naruto's been up to," he muttered before grinning. "I bet Hess just lazing around again. Damn lazy fox," he said, but there was no heat to his words. After Shikamaru and Hinata found him like that some time back, the fox only associated with them. There was a level of open hostility to practically everyone outside the Hyuga clan, with the exceptions being him, Shikamaru and the Hokage, but that wasn't saying much in the old man's case, and maybe Iruka as well, and if he was being entirely honest with himself, he didn't blame the fox one bit. The people of Konohagakure were relatively nice people, but they could be especially vicious to those they hated and or feared, and Naruto, they used to hate, but as time went on, that in turn, changed to fear of him. Buds lived a hard life, he mused. He was only 15 as is, but it was a tough pill to swallow learning that Naruto, despite being younger than the rest of the clan heirs in Harris, had suffered the majority of his entire life. That night when he found him in that abandoned building in the red light district was something he'd never forget. Everything changed after that. Despite his pride as a member of the Inuzuka and a maturing alpha, as his mother said, he deeply respected Naruto for not lashing out at those that hurt him. He knew full well just how powerful Naruto probably was now, compared to when he was just a human. Hinata told him about that stray Kumo Jonin that tried to kidnap Hanabi, and how Naruto would have easily torn the man limb from limb, if not for her timely intervention. No, Kiba knew his place under the power that Naruto held. That was a true alpha, and he was proud to call him a friend. Speaking of Naruto, had been walking lost in thought so long that he found himself wandering to the Hyuga clan's front gates. After a brief moment of thought, he decided to make his way in. Had been so busy with training that he hadn't the chance to check up on his nine-tailed bro. The guard stopped him for a quick question before letting him pass. A quick minute's walk found him just outside Hinata's private garden spring. Naruto would kill him if he messed anything here up, that was for damn sure. He saw the massive golden fox relaxing by the spring, belly up and head hanging back. If one thing was for certain, it was that Naruto knew how to relax. Kiba barely got within 30 feet of him before one of his 9 tails suddenly extended and wrapped itself around him, pulling him in close. Wohahaha. He laughed from within the Kyuubi's grasp. Hinata wasn't kidding. "You do have a great nose." he exclaimed with a cheeky grin. Naruto finally opened one eyes, glancing up at the laughing Inyazuka, before cracking a grin of his own. Hello to you too, Kiba." It was the deep hum of his voice that greeted the teen. "Did you need something?" The fox asked tiredly. Besides opening a single eye and grabbing Kiba with his tail, he hadn't moved an inch. "I actually came to check up on you, my sensei bounced today so I was bored," he stated casually, as if he wasn't being held aloft 10 feet in the air by the most powerful thing within miles. "It's been forever since we hung out." Naruto hummed in response, before setting him down and rolling over to his feet. He found himself staring at the fish in the spring, lost in thought. He sighed, before addressing the Inyazuka. "Yeah, it has been," the fox muttered, after Hinata finally got placed with a team of her own. "Her damn sensei's been doing nothing but taking them on team training exercises and D-rank missions. Ino and Sakura are great actually, but this lack of action is killing me," he ranted, his tails thumping the ground angrily. Kiba couldn't help but notice how he seemed to separate himself from being included in the team. It's been a year since that stupid team meeting, and they've accomplished nothing. Kiba could tell just talking about it was making him angry. He needed to change the subject. Forget about the team for now," he said offhandedly. "What about you and Hinata? How has life been?" At that a smile broke out across the fox's black lips. Leave it to mentioning what he cared about most to put him in a better mood. "That good huh?" Kiba chimed in, a knowing smile plastered over his face. "I swear, I don't know what it'd be without her," he muttered quietly. Kiba didn't have to be a genius to catch the fact that Naruto said what not where. Kiba had a pretty good goddamn idea where Naruto would be right now without his princess. To calm him down and keep a level head, had seen Naruto nearly blow up over minor things many times now. And the unbridled rage the fox held within was almost always hidden just beneath the surface, and from the stories Hess heard so far, it didn't take much for that rage to breach the surface. It was a reason that unless Hinata accompanied him, he almost never left the Hyuga compound. But as much as Naruto hated, and how impossibly hard it was to calm him down, one look at Hinata's crying face violently shot down that anger. Kiba had the rare chance of seeing the fox cower under said Hyuga when she got mad with him. It was a strange relationship for sure, but he thinks he speaks for most when he says that Hess glad for Hinata's part in it. Some people might call him weird for saying this. He understood Naruto's anger. He remembered the stories his mother told him when he was younger about the legendary Kyuubi no Yoko. Woe's unimaginable rage knew no bounds. Woe's very hate could kill if it so much as looked at you. If Naruto truly had been turned into the legendary Kyuubi, then his random bursts of murderous hatred were explained. Naruto wasn't the Kyuubi, but his soul had more or less taken over the body of the Kyuubi, and with all that power came all that blinding hatred. He assumed the fact that Naruto wasn't immediately mentally broken under all that stress and mental strain could be attested to his horrible upbringing and the fact that he was more or less used to intense emotions. At least, that's how his mother explained it to him. She said it was a stressful and only partially understood situation, and that the Hokage wanted as few people to know about it as long as he could make it last. As it was, the only reason Tsume explained it in detail was the fact that he already knew Naruto had been changed, and so withholding information like that would be irrelevant. "Princess is actually out right now. 2 of her personal guards are with her," Naruto stated, finally turning away from the water to face the teen. "I was planning on spending the rest of the afternoon napping." In fact, following what he said, a large yawn escaped his maw. Kiba laughed. "You're a damn lazy fox, you know that," the wild boy stated. Naruto hummed with a smile. He completely agreed with that statement. "It's just so hard to have energy for anything nowadays," he sighed, yawning halfway through. Kiba just laughed, Naruto cementing his statement immediately. Naruto seemed to space out again for a moment before facing Kiba once more. "Do you know how tiring it is, being angry all the time?" he asked, not really expecting an answer. Kiba was silent for a moment before sighing. "I'm sorry buddy, I wish I could say I've been there," Kiba explained before pulling the larger fox into a rather strange looking hug. "But I want you to know that we're always here for ya." Naruto sighed, closing his eyes happily. It was always reassuring to learn that people still cared for him. Many days he was overcome with feelings of insecurity. And it was moments like this and with Hinata's love that helped him realize there were still great people in this world, not many, but some nonetheless. "Thanks Kiba," he muttered. "Anytime bud, anytime." He needed to change the subject, but how? Silence passed for a little while after that, Naruto returning to simply basking in the afternoon sunlight. It wasn't until Kiba started humming that the fox felt like the teen was up to something devious, and knowing Kiba, it was probably only 1 or 2 things. "So, boob guy or butt guy?" Naruto had to mentally do a double take just to make sure his ears weren't deceiving him. "Excuse me?" He sounded offended in a way. Should he be offended? He was confused. "I'm unsure if I follow." "Definitely confused." "Oh come off it." The brown-haired teen jabbed. "You know what I'm talking about. Do you like butts on a girl or boobs?" "Personally I'm a big boob guy myself, however I'm not picky." How did we even get on a topic like this, I wonder? Naruto deadpanned, eyebrow twitching. He had a real big urge to slap the teen upside the head and held no guilt to the thought. You like him large or small? I won't judge, Kiba was grinning madly, wiggling his eyebrow suggestively at the nine-tailed monster. A blush made its way onto the fox's face, not that you could tell with all his fur. You sound just like my godfather, he sighed. Honestly, he barely tolerated one damn pervert. He couldn't handle two, damn, such was life he supposed. At least Dog Boy wasn't talking like that about Hinata, then he'd have some choice words, to say the least. Large, gotcha. Kiba exclaimed with a thumbs up. Naruto felt his face heat up again. What did this stupid question matter anyway? It's not like he could even enter a relationship as he was. Why'd even want to be romantically involved with him, a massive nine-tailed fox? As it doesn't matter, compatibility for a relationship is slim. Naruto narrowly dodged the subject, or so he thought. Kiba's grin just widened. You say that now, fox boy. But I hear you're able to change your shape and have been getting better at it, he said, big dumb smile marring his features. That response got the white diamond-like gem said Fox's forehead to gleam in response. Suo, how long until you can rock a semi-normal human body again? Yeah, I've got this white gold form down great, it makes it real easy to hang around with you. That also got said Fox to shut up. He wanted to refute the teen's claims, but couldn't deny the truth he found in them. Honestly, he had been training to control his new body with the power of the legendary Kyuubi. Many different abilities came with it, besides his apparent immense strength. He had a limitless supply of chakra, or at the very least so much that he had never run low. His body was very malleable, with it existing physically, yet at the same time Hess able to bend said physics around himself. That was how he was able to extend his tails triple their length, and how he was able to shrink and also rarely grow parts of himself in size, or just his entire body too. He thought that was all well and good, but it wasn't until his godfather, Jiraiya, started getting personally involved with him that he learned that there was much more to his body. It was Jiraiya that suggested that Naruto try and shift his body to that of something different than a fox. Since then, training to better control his powers had begun. That was well over a year ago. Ah, well then, let's see it. Kiba stated. Apparently Naruto's silence gave away his knowledge of his level of abilities. He wasn't going to lie. Changing back to a quote-unquote normal form was indeed something he'd been training to do, and only recently had he gained some level of success in that department. He supposed it couldn't hurt to show Kiba his current ability. DCH, okay, fine. The fox finally relented with a grumble, standing up from his resting spot. But don't laugh, or it'll kill you, I suppose. The grunted threat fell on uncaring ears. Alright, you big fluffy tsundere. Kiba thoughtfully ducked the tail that came flying at him in response. Naruto closed his eyes, standing stock still. Kiba wisely shut up, instead watching curiously. He was genuinely interested to see how far the fox had come. Naruto's eyes tightened in concentration, his brows furrowed. A few moments passed before the Hashi no Tama in his forehead began to light up. A second later, his entire body was enveloped in a blinding white light. Whoa, this was the first time had truly seen Naruto transform before. Eventually the outline of his body began to shift and morph. The sounds of a struggle were audible, and it seemed as if the shift was going to fail. But after a few seconds, his body began to change shape. Soon enough his body had seemingly returned to a normal human shape, however, with many fox-like additions. Eventually the light faded, leaving behind. Whoa. Dude. Look at you. Kiba couldn't help the huge grin that split his face when the light vanished. What was left in its wake Kiba could only describe as, well, dude, you're straight up beautiful. He wasn't afraid to say it, their friendship was like that. He barely resembled the blonde he grew up knowing. Kiba's visual inspection wasn't wrong. The form Naruto took was very elegant. He looked similar to the fourth Hokage in a way, but much younger and lacking any baby fat. His face was sharp, sharper than before the incident. He had 3 thick red face paint-like marks on each cheek reminiscent of whiskers. Bright red face paint decorated around his eyes, bringing out his strange-looking golden eyes which sported an intriguing new cross-shaped pupil. His canine teeth had extended in length and ended at a sharp shining point. There was a wind passing through, shuffling his newly minted head of spiked yet smooth blonde hair, of which 2 large blonde furred fox ears extended from, the insides of marked with a red fur. The rest of his body seemed rather normal, besides the 9 massive beautiful bright blonde and white tip tails that burst from his rear end. His fingertips were marked with bright red painted long sharp fingernails. And finally, he was adorned in some sort of expensive looking elegant ceremonial robes that instantly reminded Kiba of some sort of mythical shrine made in her spirit. Adorning the robes were multiple red ribbons, and even a fur collar that was decorated with a yellow and red rope, from which a large golden bell hung from. Another bell and ribbon hung from each of his large twitching ears. His feet were topped with bright red wooden sandals, of which left his sharp red painted toenails exposed, and finally, a giant black bow tie wrapped around his abdomen like a high-rise belt. This is what you're capable of, dude. Why don't you just use this form all the time? Almost in response to his question, Naruto's Hashi no Tama, which had been moved to his chest during the transformation, started glowing brightly from under his robes. The now humanoid Kitsune's eyes narrowed and twitched in concentration. As I am now, this for TCH he seemed to struggle with something, hand raised to his head in pain. It felt strange hearing Naruto's voice in anything but a deep gravely rumble. But this new form seemed to soften that voice tremendously. Without princess assistance, it's very hard to. He was cut off as his form fluctuated, turning white momentarily before he gained control again. He didn't need to explain anymore, the point was made. With his current skills in body transformation, maintaining this form was very difficult. He'd need more skill and time with it to keep it level. Wow, how long can you stay like this? Kyuubi asked, motioning to the elegant Kitsune shrine keeper. Naruto seemed to take in a deep breath before letting it out and calming down. Not too long, probably 10 minutes or so, after the initial struggle, had gained control of his raging chakra enough for the time being. He stood there for a moment, eyes closed in concentration. Behind him, his massive fluffy tails billowed in the wind, waving about at random. Well, that's pretty awesome all things considered. The teen exclaimed, hand on his hips, then he started humming, raising a hand to his chin in seemingly deep thought. Naruto felt a foreboding sensation wash over him, instantly reminding him of Jiraiya's presence. His blood ran cold. Could Kyuubi have found out? Even Jiraiya hadn't figured it out yet. He'd die of embarrassment if anyone important found out. If it wasn't boobs or butts, then, Naruto facepalmed. He swore this guy was a one-track mind. At all damn times, it was seriously starting to get on his nerve. Legs? As if a damn floodgate had opened, the Kitsune's face lit up like a fire, blushing from head to toe. Kyuubi cold looked more gleeful and wasn't afraid to voice it. Ha. Yes. I knew you had some kind of kink. It's always the weird ones. I thought it would been her chest you were madly after, but now see it was her lower half. He barely escaped the repeated tail strikes that came flying at him. Whoa okay. Kyuubi was stuck between squealing like a pig and running for his life. Whoa hey, I'm sorry. Of course, by this point Naruto only saw red. Hey mercy. No, and the deep voice was back. Holy shit. When did you learn to spit fire? Kyuubi was going to learn the hard way, just what happened when you mess with Konoha's resident nine-tailed fox. He wasn't looking forward to explaining to his mother why his favorite coat was burned. You're beautiful. Kyuubi hissed, trying to put the fire on his ass out. Flattery will get you nowhere, he growled, but his rebuttal was shot down by the blush that lit up his face at the teen's words. He wasn't going to deny just how nice it felt to hear those words. Just the sexiest goddamn creature I've ever seen. Like holy shit. You're so hot that no one else could even dream of stealing your Hyuga babe away. By this point he swore he saw steam coming from the Kitsune's furred ears as he sputtered. His face was so red he found it hard to differentiate between his face and the color of his eyeliner. He had, like damn, so when you mentioned her killer headlock with her thighs while training, you were. The Hinata help me. He shouted, scrambling to hide behind the Hyuga princess that had apparently just returned from a shopping trip, only to find her fox terrorizing the Inuzuka air. From the looks of it, he deserved it, said Eris took one look at the Kitsune's form, before a maddening blush bloomed across her face. And no, she coughed, failing to hide her blush, and no, I don't think I will. Die. Save me. Alright then, teammate, so you believe that you're ready for more responsibility. Another 3 months had passed since we last checked in on our lovely bunch of characters, and in that time, they had been doing nothing but completing low-ranking missions and training. In the case of Naruto, had been honing his skills in the transformation department and working on reining in his raging anger which he swore existed purely to mess with his life. As it stands, it'd been relatively the same day in and day out for nearly 9 months straight, and teammate felt like they were more than ready for it. Ino and Sakura felt conflicted when the conversation drifted towards asking their sensei for a higher-ranking mission. Luckily for them, Naruto had their backs and would be the one to convince Kurenai into letting them go. And that was another thing that had changed in the time spent with a new teammate. At first, when his world was flipped upside down years ago, he found solace in Hinata and his few close friends. He violently pushed anyone and everyone else away, too afraid of being abused again. He was done making friends, he was vulnerable, and he knew it all too well. Everyone was practically an enemy in his hate-filled eyes, and the higher-ups in the village were seriously concerned with him acting out on that hatred. But slowly, he began to broaden his list of friends. Obviously, Kiba Inuzuka and Shikamaru Nara were among the first of those people. For obvious reasons, that trust and friendship eventually spread to the rest of the members of the Hyuga clan, mostly the lower class early on. After a dire incident some time back, the rest of the wide-eyed people put their trust trust in him as well, and he in turn did too. He eventually came to see the Hyuga clan as family, because unlike the general population, these people didn't judge based on who he was or where he came from, they didn't immediately cast him to the side like the rest of the world, and even treated him as another member of their extended family. When that realization settled in, he felt much of that burning anger and resentment had held onto for so long just begin to slip away. For the first time in his entire lifetime, he had a family of sorts, people that truly cared for him and weren't afraid of him. After that, his trust practically didn't extend outside the clan walls, and sadly, the Hokage wasn't immediately on the list of people the fox trusted. The realization hurt the man deeply, but he understood the reasons behind it, which was partially behind the reasons why he had been doing all he could for the fox. But when he was first placed on teammate as Hinata's quote-unquote guardian, he was sure he was going to hate the rest of the team. From first glance, both Ino and Sakura seemed extremely vain and lacking in any skills, of course, since the first in his life was protecting his princess. The very idea of having to entrust her life to a group of inexperienced ingrates made him want to blow a goddamn gasket, but it was only a couple of months in that the girls of teammate ended up proving themselves to him in multiple regards. First and foremost, they weren't slackers by any means. Sakura was a mute due to an attack on her as a child and resorted to sign language to communicate. Ino Yamanaka was her best friend and only one in their age group that knew sign language fluently. As a result, she almost always acted as a sort of translator in most conversations. They were best friends since childhood and had a rivalry that assisted in helping them grow as people and as ninja, besides for their fangirl tendencies. When it came to in their words, particularly hot piece of ass, they were serious hard-working girls. Eventually Naruto came to trust them as well and was much more relaxed ninja their presence now than when the team was initially made. He even let them in on some of his secrets, like the fact that he could transform and was Hinata's practical spirit guardian, and that he was the Kyuubi no Yoko. That conversation went over partially well, if he said so himself. It was quite surprising really. It also helped that they absolutely adored him and gave killer head pats. Eventually, the team got fed up with the lack of action and demanded a tougher mission, which was great because Naruto had been extremely patient with the Hokage so far, but couldn't handle another D-rank mission. He needed to get out of the village, otherwise he was going to lose it and kill someone. Not his fault, damn it. This, of course, leads us up to the present. Teammate had just requested an official C-rank mission, a mission that would take them outside the village boundaries and into foreign territory. Standing in front of the Hokage's desk was the entirety of Teammate, with Naruto, who had donned his small fox form, resting comfortably atop Hinata's head similarly to that of Kiba's Ninken, Akamaru. His gold and white fur came as a shock to the Hokage, but he'd likely find out the cause at some point. "I'm surprised it took you this long to storm in here," the aged leader stated with a small grin. "I had honestly thought you all would have burned yourselves out on D ranks months ago." The revelation that they could have asked for a higher ranking mission sooner did not sit well with any of the members of Team 8. "The hour saying we could have just simply asked for a mission and you'd have given it to us," the bright blonde-haired girl retorted, eyes twitching. The Hokage seemed to grin wider. "Well, young Yamanaka, when you put it like that, yes indeed." The girl had to back off, lest she blow up. Breath girl breath. Fuck, she called to escape the strangled curse that slipped past her purple puffy lips as she rubbed her temples. She could feel a headache quickly rising to the surface. She could practically feel Naruto grinning at her from atop Hinata's head. The fox found out pretty early on in their relationship as team members that the pretty young blonde, who was supposed to be daddy's perfect little girl, had some anger issues and a legendary mouth. She'd often act up against others to spite them, knowing it upset her father. Her mother couldn't be happier with it. Stupid shit ass bitch. The angered mutterings of one pissed off Yamanaka aside, Hiruzen turned his attention back to the rest of the team. "Yes, well, let's get down to business." Hiruzen was happy to finally be able to poke fun at his ninja again without fear of Naruto tearing his head off. Since Jiraiya's return, both the men had been practically walking on eggshells around the fox, and rightfully so. You couldn't imagine the immense relief when the Kyuubi's legendary hatred began to be tamed by their very own princess. That being said, it was still very easy to set him off, but the result was less dangerous than before. "Kurenai-chan, are you sure that you're ready for this?" There was an unnatural softness to his voice when addressing the black-haired woman. The Yuki reached for her arm, seemingly out of a nervous habit, whether she was aware of it or not. She'd been biting her black lips, showed just how apparently frazzled she was. She knew she shouldn't be, as a jonin of Konoha, and a damn good ninja. She should theoretically have nothing to worry about, but that part of her mind just kept screaming at her that everything was going to go horribly wrong. "Kurenai?" Hiruzen spoke again, knowingly pulling her out of the train of dark thoughts she'd been pulled down. He could see it in her face. Even though she tried to hide it, she wasn't mentally ready or prepared to do this, but even so she wanted to prove herself useful to her village. "Yes, Hokage-sama." she asked, her neutral face staring back at his caring one. He could see right through that seemingly unfazed facade, right through to the scared little girl on the inside. Do you believe that you and your team is ready to leave the village on a higher ranking mission? The Hokage carefully studied the faces of each member of Team 8. The pink-haired girl, resident mute of the team, Sakura, had this determined look on her face. Good. Ino seemed in a foul mood, but he suspected that he was almost entirely to blame for that, but she too seemed ready. Hinata, well, the girl seemed to carry herself professionally, holding an air of elegance and power to her stance. There was no doubt that out of the three members, Hinata was much stronger than Ino or Sakura, but, as was shown by her actions, she didn't flaunt herself. Why yes, Okage-sama, we are ready for more responsibility, Kurenai stated. Hiruzen seemed to stare at her for a few moments, contemplating something, before finally relenting. I see, well then, Team 8, I have a mission for you. It isn't something that you all should easily be able to handle. Following his statement, he handed Kurenai a scroll containing their mission requirements. He gave the woman a moment to look it over, before continuing, your mission is to protect your charge during his journey back home. The danger you should face during the mission should be limited to nothing more than simple bandits. The team spoke quietly amongst themselves about this mild revelation, leaving Kurenai to continue speaking with the Hokage, while the younger members of Team 8 seemed upset at the rather easy-sounding mission request. They weren't going to bite a gift horse in the mouth. This was going to be their very first C-rank mission. They couldn't mess this up if this mission went downhill. That kind of bad reputation would stick with them for the rest of their careers. So far it has been a flawless run on D ranks, and if they had their way, this would be the beginning of their flawless run on C ranks. And Hinata, well, she had actually requested that Naruto try to hold himself back for the duration of said mission. He had at first vehemently denied the request, but she eventually got him to relent. She knew he found it stupid, but their victory in the ninja world had to be on their own time. It's just how the world worked. If Hinata went throwing out Naruto like some kind of battle monster every single battle, which would most seemingly result in a victory practically every goddamn time, faith would be built up in not her, but her quote-unquote pet, because again, that's the way the world would view a single woman single-handedly controlling the goddamn Kyuubi, as if he was her loyal trained pet. Of course, in the privacy of their own home, he wouldn't deny the truth to that statement. He was his princess pet, Nuff said. In the open however, he'd probably kill you for insinuating something so, well, embarrassingly true. The way it was, Naruto started out with insane power, but zero control, which left him floating in the water so to speak, while his team had little power and worked to build it. Naruto's weakness was his lack of skill. But that was a weakness he'd been working on over the course of well over 2+ years. Oi 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 wash old dis, bunch of teens. Naruto's mental musings were cut off by the drunk ranting of an old man, led into the office by the Hokage's personal guard. In stumbled a man clearly drunk off his knickers, while cradling another bottle of liquor in his hands. Do you expect me to trust a bunch of kids to save my life? They look just out of preschool. He spit, nearly stumbling over himself. Naruto felt his hackles rise in anger. Who was this no-name to question his or his team's abilities? And to claim that they couldn't defend him, the nerve. Hiruzen saw Naruto quickly getting riled up, thought fast, and moved to intervene. It wouldn't do if a paying client was killed by one of his own. Here's nothing to worry about, Tazuna-san. My team here is more than prepared to defend against the common thug. The Hokage responded clearly, shutting the old man up. Yeah, the ragged old man, Tazuna griped back rudely, before pointing at the little fox atop the Hyuga prince's head. Look at Datna, can't eve leave her damn pet at home. Said little fox glared murder at the pointed digit and was heavily tempted to bite it off. Hiruzen started sweating nervously. What, you having pretty princesses doing da dirty work now, just a bunch of girls. The room immediately got considerably hotter. Ino and Sakura started visibly sweating bullets. Flames started seeping out from Naruto's mouth akin to liquid fire, his eyes twitching violently. Now, don't tempt the fox. I won't stop him if he decides to cook you, Hiruzen stated placatingly, realizing just how close to the edge the man was wandering. Following his statement, Tazuna caught sight of literal goddamn fire leaking out from between the little monster's black lips. That almost comical sounding warning didn't seem so comical anymore, and he wisely shut up. Naruto snorted. Blasting real fire from his nostrils, his point was made very, very clearly. Wonderful. Now then, on to business, Team 8, this is your charge, it's your job to protect him and keep him safe, Sarutobi explained, before frowning. However, I won't be held accountable if little Kurama-kun here decides to torch him if he continues taunting him, he stated seriously, as much as a bad reputation that would bring. He honestly wasn't going to risk his relationship with Naruto over a dumb drunk man. Tazuna threw a shaky look at the Hyuga and more importantly, the little demon atop her head. He cursed himself silently, He knew his mouth was going to get him in trouble eventually, and this time it was with a ninja and her little murder beast. He swore to himself that he'd stop drinking after this, lest he suffer the wrath of those he inadvertently pissed off. I see, he managed to wheeze out, too fearful for anything more. This at least managed to soothe Naruto's burning anger that had arisen. Well then, I shall accept your services. He hoped that would suffice for the time being. The girls on team 8 seemed a bit upset, while Kurenai looked indifferent. As usual, Naruto turned his nose up at the man, refusing his apology, while letting another flaming breath go. It was really starting to get hot in there by that point. Understood, Hokage-sama, Kurenai commented. The woman turned back to her stewing team, crossing her arms. Meet me at the village gates in 1 hour, with her piece said. She left in a swirl of leaves. The rest of the team gave their respects to the Hokage, before making their leave as well. With them gone, that left only the Hokage and Tazuna. The ragged man glanced at the village leader nervously, to which said leader raised an eyebrow at him as if to say, the hell are you waiting for? With nothing left to say, Tazuna left the office. Well, what do you think? Moments after the last guest left Hirizin's office, Jiraiya appeared from seemingly nowhere. The Toad Sage had his arms crossed, a look of thought etched across his face, had been silently watching the entire encounter, judging the team from the shadows. If I'm being entirely honest, Jiraiya started, frown lessening. I think the kid's come a long way. You saw how easily he held his form together. You also know how easily his form is disrupted by his anger. And a year ago what happened here would have reverted him no doubt, he stated. He was honestly happy with the progress Naruto had made since he reappeared in his life. Yes, however, that boiling anger still remains. I thought you said he'd be over this issue by now. Was that not the whole reason we held the entire team back for so long? Hiruzen questioned, giving the Toad Sage a pointed look. Jiraiya just frowned again. No, you've got it all wrong. That wasn't to reduce his anger. That was simply giving him enough time to learn to control it better. He stated seriously, Hiruzen, that deep-seated rage in his heart will most likely never vanish. You must understand that the original Kyuubi and all its unimaginable hatred has been poured onto the boy. You should be thankful he hasn't snapped and murdered everyone within miles. Hiruzen just sighed, rubbing his temples to soothe the oncoming headache. He knew it was too much to ask for that anger he contained to simply vanish with time, but he just couldn't help it. He could only hope. Yes, well, I had hoped he had a little more control over that rage. You saw the way he looked at Tazuna. He nearly torched him for insulting the women on his team. The old man retorted. Jiraiya simply grinned. You're coming at this from the wrong angle. Yes, you are right. He nearly torched the fool, but why was he so righteously angry? The Toad Summoner asked, and then continued. He was angry because someone insulted those he cared about, and that includes his entire team. He's beginning to put his trust in people again, and is treating his team like his family, whether he is aware of it or not. Hiruzen had the decency to look surprised. He hadn't made that connection at all. Yet with it right in front of his face, he couldn't deny what his students said. He supposed the fox had made much more progress than he initially thought. And, let us face it, if you had this scenario happen perhaps 6 months ago, well, let's just say you'd most certainly have one less client by now. He looked ready to kill. But he didn't, even after the man continuously insulted his people, Jiraiya stated, seemingly deeply amused, that, Hiruzen, is progress. He smiled at that. It seems like I was mistaken in my initial assumption, Hiruzen stated, before clapping, your insight is truly astounding. You should take over for the Hokage Paziti. Hell no, nice try, the white-haired sage snorted, failing to keep a grin off his face. One day I will get you to take this hat. The sun was still high in the skies above Konohagakure. After the meeting at the Hokage Tower, teammates split apart to gather their gear, before joining Kurenai at the village gates roughly an hour later. Sakura and Ino were geared up in a similar fashion, lightly, but with just enough to get them by on the road. Just a decently sized bag did them well. Hinata had packed a bit more, but nothing too extravagant, normal supplies and a small tent that would fit the 3 girls comfortably inside. Kurenai seemed to follow the Hyuga's idea as well. When they arrived, they seemed to realize a little too late that the distance they were going to travel would prove a bit annoying when having to carry so much gear. Yet, before anyone could really say anything, Naruto offered to carry everything for them, and before a certain princess managed to get a word in edgewise, Naruto grew in size, back to his normal massive size. His retention of his golden white form seemed to confuse the villagers more than upset them. Seeing a softer colored Kyuubi than the usual red, they still dodged him at every turn. When everyone was finally set, all they had left to do was wait for Tazuna to arrive. For a drunk fool, the old man actually arrived sooner than anyone anticipated. The man seemed jittery, and his nervousness was only amplified when he saw the little fox from earlier, and the fact that the little fox wasn't so little anymore. Naruto threw an annoyed glance at the man, but a commanding pat from his rider stopped him. The Hyuga princess leaned down over the fox's back, mouth next to his large furry ears. She softly explained that killing the client wasn't the best way of completing the mission, go figure. So, with nothing else keeping them back, the team finally made their leave. For the first time in their adventures as Team 8, they left the protection of the village walls. From here on out, it would be their skills and teamwork that would keep them safe from harm. After Naruto torching anyone he thought posed a threat to those he cared for, that too. The sun hung low in the skies, casting a harsh glow over the land. It had been 6 hours since Team 8 left the safety of the hidden leaf, and it had been 6 hours of nothing but walking. It started out a quiet journey, but 3 hours in the silence became unbearable, at least to Ino and Sakura, who spent the next 2 hours talking between each other. It was a rather one-sided sounding conversation, since only Ino was really speaking. Sakura would just sign back to the blonde, usually followed up with emotive body language. It was hard being a mute, but having a friend as great as Ino alongside her made it bearable. It also touched the Pinky's heart when she learned that Naruto learned simple sign language just to speak with her. But after 5 long hours of walking, even chatting became a bit much. At some point both girls expressed their exhaustion, and Naruto offered them a ride on his back next to Hinata. It was also smarter to save their energy if they ran into trouble. Eventually, however, the comfortable silence had to be ruined. As they continued down the road, something stood out to Naruto. It didn't seem like the others noticed, but he certainly did. There was a hidden presence on the road beside them, and once he caught onto it, he also caught wind of the scent of 2 separate people, other than his own. "Kurenai-sensei," Naruto spoke up suddenly, glancing at the dark-haired beauty from the corner of his eyes. "I sense an enemy presence." He was sure of it now, no doubt about it, enemy ninja, undoubtedly. Kurenai nodded slightly, letting him know she heard him. If they were to visually reveal that they knew of an enemy presence, they would blow any chance of a surprise attack, so for the time being they would continue on silent, pretending to be unassuming. The team continued down the road at a normal pace, quickly nearing 2 distinct puddles of water. Hinata frowned from atop the fox, but said nothing. A gentle kick from her foot and a slight tilt of her head was all that he needed to know. Those puddles, we were in puddles at all. Slowly the team casually approached the puddles, nearing them, passing them and moving on forward, as if on cue. The moment they all passed the spots of water, 2 separate ninja burst from their hiding spots. The fox didn't even turn around before he lashed out with a massive tail swipe, only just barely missing the men. The enemy ninja seemed to waste no time with talk before charging the one they presumed was the leader of the group. Both Ino and Sakura leapt from atop Naruto's back, surrounding Tazuna with kunai drawn. Kurenai leapt back, narrowly avoiding the dual claw swipe aimed at her. The ninja were armed with 2 large seemingly poisoned steel claws that were connected to each other with a chain, most likely used for team tactics. But their initial surprise attack having failed, the ninja weren't prepared for the fox when he swiped at them again. This time Naruto's attack struck true, and the chain attaching the 2 ninja was cut in half. Surprised and caught off guard by the fox's presence and powerful attacks, they failed to get away from the Hyuga heiress as she appeared behind them, immediately disabling them with her clan's special jutsu. Momentarily stunned by the Hyuga heiress attack, they were no match for the massive white gold furred tail that came flying after them like a bat out of hell. Like a train hitting them dead in the face, the 2 ninja were instantly rendered incapacitated when hit with enough force that their bodies broke the trees they were sent through. Taking this as his chance, Naruto moved in for the capture. The 2 enemy ninja suddenly found themselves hoisted up into the air by their arms, each pulled taut to the sides by large powerful tails, of which there were now 5 visible. "Is it over? Did we win?" The fox's ear twitched at the voice of his blonde teammate as her composure finally broke once the fighting ended. Sakura's nervously twitching face said as much as it needed to. She was scared for her life, and her heart was still racing from the encounter. Hinata was obviously much more compassed than the other 2, seeing her almost blankly stare the enemy down, fingers charged with her clan's signature attack, ready to lash out at a moment's notice. But even then she was still shaking, heart beating vibrantly beneath her breasts. He could smell the fear emitting from her form, the other 2 girls as well. It was his many hours of training to rein in his anger that saved the 2 men from being reduced to a puddle. The moment he got his deadly claws on them, they should grant themselves lucky that he was only pinning them down and not ripping them in half. He wasn't going to risk his precious people like that, and hadn't taken his eyes off of them for even a second, his piercing red eyes staring balefully at them, watching for any signs of resistance. If they tried to do a one-handed jutsu, he'd rip their damn arm off. I think that's that, Ino-chan, Kurenai stated surely, brushing the dust off her shoulders. She stepped up to the bound ninja, carefully prying the sharp as spikes golden tail away from one of them. "Now, please tell me everything," the black-haired beauty requested. "I really don't want to punish you, of course." Their response was expected. "How about you go fu?" The man's rant was cut short when without even a twitch of his eyes, Naruto broke both his ankles in an instant with his tail's crushing grip. His screams were quickly drowned out by said fox's second tail once more. Frowning thoughtfully, the red-eyed Yuuhi turned to the other bound ninja. She hoped he'd give her a better answer than his friend, and by his ghostly pale expression, she was sure he would. So that's it for today, I will stop here and hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please hit the like button, share and subscribe. Also don't forget to drink water and do support fanfiction author, link in description. Take care, bye.